This is the Patriots Drive Podcast.
We are all Patriots.
Where we discuss, analyze, and answer questions to all things happening in the NFL and with our New England Patriots. Now, here's your host, Cole Kelly.
Welcome into another edition of the Patriots Drive Podcast. A lot of news today. Big day around the NFL. I mean, one of the biggest trades I've seen in recent history with the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, all that stuff. We'll get into all that stuff and more, touching on news around the NFL, more Patriots-related specific news, and we'll touch on the Combine towards the end of this as well. But I'm here with my co-host, Jace Campbell. How's it going, Jace?
Ooh, crazy day in the NFL, and I think it's just going to get crazier. I mean, it's a pebble effect, right? You get the ball rolling, and teams are going to start panicking, and the AFC just got a whole lot better with Russell Wilson coming into that conference. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams respond. I think for Patriots fans, though, it's kind of a disappointing day. Lots of guys that we had our eyes on probably getting taken off the market, whether it's signing extensions or franchise tag. But we'll get into that. But it's kind of an exciting day. It's here. I mean, next week at this time, we'll be knowing who the Patriots are getting.
Yeah, 6 days until legal tampering period. So it's exciting. It's going to be a lot quieter of a free agency period for the Patriots this season than last year. Obviously, the money is completely different, but doesn't make it less exciting necessarily. There's still an intriguing amount of people that the Patriots will be looking at, and it'll be interesting to see how they try to fill some of the holes that they have, because some of the news of the day, J.C. Jackson, we'll touch on a little more in a bit, but that's going to be a big hole that they're going to have to fill. So we'll start off with just news around the NFL and the biggest story of the day, Russell Wilson, the Broncos. Blockbuster traded with the Seahawks to acquire Russell Wilson. I believe they traded Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2 first-rounders, 2 seconds, and a 5th.
Andrew Lock,
yep, for Russell Wilson and a 4th. So crazy trade. What are your initial thoughts on that trade, and how do you think it shakes up the AFC?
Well, I think that they're pulling this off because they see what the Rams did last year, and they're like, hey, if the Rams can do
the year
this
before.
Yeah, and I think it's
I
think it's a little different when you're signing Tom Brady in free agency. You're not losing, your future and all these players that can help you win now. So I think it's a little different there, but I think that they're looking at the Rams. They're saying, hey, we can do that. I think that the Broncos are now a playoff contender. I still don't think that they're going to compete in the AFC, though. I think that they lost a good interior run stopper. They lost arguably a top 5 tight end. He could develop into a top 5 tight end. Noah Fant has shown, progressions where he can be that. And frankly, I think Jerry Jeudy's good. I think Cortland Sutton's good. I just don't think that receiver core is enough to win you a Super Bowl. And the O-line isn't tremendously better. It's definitely better than what Seattle had, but it's not crazy, like the Browns or the Patriots of the NFL. So I think it's a good trade for Denver. I would almost say, unless they go win a Super Bowl, that Seattle wins this trade. And I just don't see them doing that because the AFC is so stacked right now. Like, Matthew Stafford got traded into a perfect situation. Cooper Kupp. They had a great offensive line. The defense was stacked. Jalen Ramsey. I mean, there's a lot of question marks in the Broncos team, and I think that Russell Wilson makes them definitely a playoff contender, but that division with quarterbacks now, Derek Carr is the worst one, and he's still dang good quarterback, but Herbert, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a tough division to win still for Denver.
Suddenly, Josh McDaniels is in quite a tough situation there in Oakland, or not Oakland, in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Suddenly has the worst quarterback in the division, and you could argue the worst team in the division maybe after this trade. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I think the Broncos are a good team. I thought them keeping Surtain, them keeping Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, all those guys, being able to keep some of their young talented pieces that they have a lot of hopes in, I think is good. It's losing Shelby Harris is tough. Like you said, good interior run defender. He is a really solid D tackle. So losing a guy like him is going to be certainly a noticeable loss, but Denver seems to usually have a pretty solid defense. And if they can plug that hole, they still have some cap space after acquiring Russ, which is crazy. They're going to have still, I think, like $20 million in cap space to fill some of those holes that they lost today. So it's definitely going to shake up the AFC a little bit. I don't necessarily see them as a Super Bowl contender right off. I think they're new head coach, new quarterback. There's going to be a lot of turnover in this area for them. So I don't think they're going to be immediately Super Bowl contenders or anything like that. I think they'll be in the playoff mix for sure. I mean, they almost were last year with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater and stuff like that. So I think Russ will certainly thrive. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have a better year. Sutton, I think they probably wish they could have kept Fant because he is a good tight end with a good young tight end with lots of potential to keep growing. So that was a loss for them. But at the end of the day, they got their franchise quarterback. They did this with Peyton Manning when they ended up getting him, and they ended up winning a Super Bowl out of that. So I think that's probably their goal here. It's a tough division to compete in. You got a lot of really talented quarterbacks and teams, and a lot of them are really young. So adding Russ to this group, I think he's the oldest quarterback in that division now, I think. I'm not sure how old Derek Carr is, but I believe Russ is older than him. So it's going to be fun. It definitely shakes things up. Of course, you never love getting a superstar quarterback getting traded into your conference, but I don't think it's going to change things that much. That division is still going to be extremely hard to win. It's going to be tough because there's going to be probably three teams or 2 to 3 teams in the wild card hunt in that division outside of their division winner. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But also just came in news about 10-15 minutes ago, Bobby Wagner being released from the Seahawks. So what do you think about that Seahawks situation, about their side of the trade and what their plan is going to have to be?
It makes sense. Bobby Wagner's on the last year of a $20 million contract. He's 31 years old. I still think he has good football left in him, but his prime's definitely behind him. So I think he should be on the Patriots radar. I mean, you drop Calvin, or you cut Calvin Noy, save $5 million. You're right around $10 million right now. If you could go get a guy like Bobby Wagner on a cheap deal and bring him in, I think that it would benefit the defense, because I don't see many leaders in that front seven as of right now. I mean, if Dante Hightower doesn't come back, you're looking at Jawan Bentley being kind of the leader of that front seven, and he's really only had 2 good years here in New England. So I think that he's a guy to look at. It depends on what his price range is. There's still a lot more holes, and maybe New England just wants to get younger at that position in general, because Bobby Wagner might be a good short term, but who knows how much longer he plays. It's hard to play the linebacker position like he's played it for as long as he has. So he could, in a year now, just hang it up and want to retire like Luke Kuechly did, or some of these other linebackers who's taken a beating in the NFL. So I would love Bobby Wagner to come here. I think that he's had one of the best careers as an inside linebacker in the NFL history. You think of Ray Lewis, guys like that. He's been right up there. He's a great run stopper. He can play in the pass. He's super smart. So he's a guy that intrigues me. It's just, what's the price tag, and what are you going to bring him in for? How long is he going to play his best ball here? Probably not, but he can fill a hole immediately, which might be able to bridge a gap if you take a young guy in the draft. So I think that it's interesting. I was shocked. You told me when we first got on, I didn't check Twitter. I thought you meant like trading for him. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. What are we going to trade for him? But now where you can sign him, you can kind of control his cap hit if he comes here. It's more intriguing. I think that's definitely something New England's got to look into.
And the thing for Seattle, which Chrome says here, Seahawks taking Malik Willis at 9. I don't know. It's a bad draft in class to need a quarterback in, and that's what's tough for them. And the other thing that's frustrating for the Seahawks is, you'd think, oh, we just traded Russell Wilson, we're going to have so many picks on top of our picks that we already have. Well, they traded a lot of picks for Jamal Adams, so they're basically just restocking some of the picks and adding a couple more. But their first round pick this year is in the Jets' hands, so they're basically getting almost their first round pick back of what it would have been around that area. And they're going to see what they do with it, but it's probably going to be I don't know, maybe take a bridge guy, sign somebody. Mitch Trubisky's been talked about as somebody guys are targeting. Maybe they'll take a shot on a quarterback, or take a bridge guy, wait till next season, and in that draft, hope that things get a little better. But it seems like they're kind of in full rebuild mode. Wagner's gone, Russ is gone. They're getting some picks back. They got Drew Lock. Maybe they'll just keep him as the bridge guy for the season and see how he does, and then try to draft a guy next year. But Bobby Wagner is a very talented player. He's up there in tackle leaders every single year. He's been a great linebacker for a long time, and certainly, we've seen the Patriots target older linebackers that are not in their prime, which I wouldn't say Bobby Wagner is bad by any means. He's still a very, very good player with a lot left in the tank, but we've seen the Patriots do this many times. Like, a guy gets cut who's maybe a little bit older and undervalued, and they're usually in the hunt for some guys like that. So it'll be interesting to see if the Patriots sniff around that situation a little bit and get in contact with Bobby Wagner. He also doesn't have an agent reportedly, so he his last deal that he signed, he negotiated himself. So it'll be interesting to see how that situation plays out if you talk to Bobby Wagner specifically. I think any middle linebacker would love to play for Bill Belichick and get a taste of this defense. So that would be fun. That would be a fun spot. It kind of just depends on the price, and we definitely need a middle linebacker this year. We might lose Bentley, Hightower. We already lost Van Noy. He's more of an edge guy, but we certainly need a middle linebacker, and that would be an intriguing option at the very least.
Yeah, and I think this becomes very interesting for the Seahawks all of a sudden, like Crow mentioned at 9. The draft class next year is going to be way better for quarterbacks. You're going to get Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. There might be another guy that creeps up in there. If you want to, kind of tank for one of those guys, you're sitting at 9. You might be able to snag a Charles Cross, a tackle that improves your O-line significantly. You might be able to get an edge rusher. We've seen Jermaine Johnson. We've seen Trayvon Walker dominate the combine. Like, there's a lot of options they can do with 9 to help build the roster now and go get that quarterback next year. I don't necessarily think they need to take Malik Willis at 9. That's just my opinion. I'm not a fan of taking a quarterback this early in this draft class. So I wouldn't do that if I was Seattle. I think that you can take best available here, improve a lot of positions you need to. You have $50 million in cap space. You can go re-sign Quandre Diggs if that's what you want to do with your secondary. Get a couple other guys. But the biggest question is are they going to keep Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf now? And if DK's on the trading, if he's on the trade block, I would expect them to want a first-round pick. I don't know if they get a first-round pick. Maybe someone would.
They would.
Would you give up 21 for DK Metcalf?
Personally, no.
I don't think I would.
I think I feel like he might be worth a first and more. The thing that's tough for me is, like, if you're asking me if I would take a first for DK, I would like to trade a first for DK. I would, but not in the situation right now because he's on the final year of his deal. And he's going to need a contract extension. He's going to be due up for one. He's going to want top dollar. So that's what's tough, is a guy like that who you don't really know how he's going to fit your system. They didn't like him coming out of college necessarily. They didn't pick him, obviously. Maybe they regret that decision now, but I think if you're going to invest a bunch of assets into a wide receiver, I don't know that I think DK Metcalf would fill the role here nicely, but I don't love that you're going to have to pay him right after you trade a bunch of assets for him, a first round pick or more. Calvin Ridley was a little different because I felt like he fit the system even better than DK would. It was also going to cost less to get him because of his circumstances. You could get him for like a second probably instead of having to give him a first plus maybe. So the Calvin Ridley idea I liked, even though you had to pay him the season after. But DK, I feel like, is going to want top of the market dollar. Based off his production the past few seasons and how dominant he was early on. So personally, I wouldn't give that up for DK as the Patriots. I would love to have DK. I don't think it's realistic that we're going to get a guy like that. Now, if you're talking about another Seahawks receiver, Tyler Lockett, who's reportedly possibly on the trade block, that changes things a little bit. I think he is a guy who would fit the system well, and his contract is not that bad. But I'll pull up his contract while you give your thoughts. What do you think about DK versus Tyler?
Well, I'm looking at Tyler Lockett's contract now, and I'm not a fan of it. He's in the he's going into the second year of a 5th-year deal. So he'll make $10 million this year, $16 million in 23, $24 million in 2024, and $24 million in 2025. Now, he's 30 right now. So he'd be on contract from 30 to his 33-year-old season. Now, I think Tyler Lockett's a great receiver. He's a vertical threat. He does a lot of good things. He's a veteran. I don't know if I want Tyler Lockett for $20 million a year, $24 million a year. That's personally my opinion.
The difference for me here is I think this is his last year of guaranteed money. So you can have him for a year and cut him if you want, if you get him for whatever value or trade him, whatever it is. So that's why contract wise, I don't feel like it's as bad because I think he only has one more year of guaranteed money, maybe 2. And you're right. He is getting a little bit older, but if you don't want to pay that money, he can be a rental here until you find the guy you want, or if you draft somebody, he can develop behind him, just whatever you want in that situation. So that's why it's more appealing than originally. If it was fully guaranteed everything or whatever, then that might be a different scenario. But I'm pretty sure after a year or two, you can cut him for nothing.
I just hate because I think, going off of this question that Brian asked, I think that Seattle's going to want probably, I want to say a fourth. I'm hesitant to maybe say a third for Tyler Lockett. I don't think New England would give that up. But with the amount of picks we have this year, you're going to give that up for a 1-year rental at the position. I think that we've seen with the draft class this year at the receiver position, just take a guy in the 3rd or 4th round and, develop him in your system for 4 years, and he's cheap that way. So I don't know. The Tyler Lockett argument, I love him as a receiver. I don't know. I think that there's too many better options in my opinion. So I'm not against it. I think that Bill could be creative around it, but when you're talking about Calvin Ridley coming here to New England, and that was the trade target we had for so long, Tyler Lockett kind of in my mind is, I don't know if I'd want it. And it sounds like what New England is, the reports come down in New England is they want a big outside X receiver. They're fine with Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne in the slot. So getting another guy like him now, I know Tyler Lockett's a down the field guy, but he's a smaller receiver. He's not going to be making 50-50 jump ball catches in the end zone. So it's kind of, getting that receiving room like very similar. And I would expect if Tyler Lockett comes in, Nelson Aguilar would be moved, which now you're kind of taking another speedster, putting a speedster in. I just feel like if you're bringing Tyler Lockett into this room right now, there's not much different skill sets. A lot of it's the same.
I feel like if the Patriots were better at developing wide receivers, then I think that's a great point of just use that 3rd, 4th round pick that you would trade for Lockett on a receiver and draft him and develop him. But we haven't seen that the Patriots have had any success with that unless it's an undrafted guy, or super late round pick, whatever. Jacoby Myers, Edelman, those type of slot guys, they seem to find sometimes late in the draft. But other than that, when have we seen the Patriots take a receiver in the top 3 rounds and have any success developing them into being any sort of solid receiver in the NFL? It just doesn't happen often. So that's why I think that if they get a receiver, they go for somebody who's a proven commodity. They know it's going to fit into the system. I know it doesn't always work out. I know they thought Aguilar would work and they gave him the money to do that, but it didn't. I don't know. I mean, Tyler Lockett is not my number 1 option, but it's intriguing at least to look at it and say, okay, if they're giving away for nothing, if you can get him for a 4th or a 5th and you can have him for a 1-year rental and either trade him or cut him or whatever you want to do after that, okay, so be it. It is what it is. I know you don't want to just go wasting picks for 1-year rentals, but if they think he's a possible fit or is kind of maybe a bridge guy and maybe would be an upgrade over Aguilar for this season and cap space wise, I don't know how that would work out their contracts for each other, but I think it's definitely an option to look at with Tyler Lockett. I think that's more likely than a guy like DK Metcalf just because of the cost of what it's going to take and the contract situation you're going to have to pay DK. I don't think that's something they'd be interested in. I don't necessarily think Tyler Lockett's a guy they'd be super, super interested in. But at this point, there's not a lot of other options out there. They got to get a receiver. They're probably not going to do it in the draft because of obviously the ginormous need at corner and on the defense side of the ball. They're probably not going to get a wide receiver early. A lot of the top wide receivers are off the board in free agency now because of the news from today, the different franchise tags and stuff. So it's tough. Like the options are getting really limited really fast, and you don't see a lot of upgrades out there that are good Patriots fits, or the guys that are good Patriots fits. The market is going to be so heavy for them because all the other guys are gone that the Patriots are going to have to outbid somebody. They just don't do that. And that's what's frustrating is we were all looking to get a number 1 receiver this offseason, and it seems like we might be going into the next year with the same receiving core.
Yeah, I think that New England's going to start. We're seeing how low the wide receiver market's getting. I think that maybe the best option out there right now is Amari Cooper. If he does get cut, New England seems to have some interest in him. I think that might be the best option in the free agent market. Maybe New England just wants to, load this cornerback position up with Tre'Davious Ward, Casey Hayward. I mean, there's still some decent corners out there that I think they're not going to fix the long-term issue in New England at cornerback, but they could come in, kind of bridge the gap, maybe develop a Sean Wade, maybe keep letting Jalen Mills develop, drafted another guy late in the round, see how he is. Well, I don't know. I think that there's a way that New England still gets a wide receiver 1, but like you mentioned, it's very slim. And we'll go into this one that Brian just asked. Mike Williams signing a huge 3-year, $60 million deal. Massive. I mean, I think that that's right what I thought he'd go for, but how inconsistent and injury prone he's been seems a little high. But I think this is a fair question. Brian's asking now, Los Angeles Chargers sitting at 17. Does this improve our chances of a good receiver that we would be interested in being there at 21?
Personally, I don't know. Personally, I don't think so. I think they might have gone into free agency. I mean, they still have Keenan Allen and a couple other younger guys that aren't nearly as good as Mike Williams. But I mean, I guess, yes, it makes it less likely that the Chargers are going to take a receiver, obviously. I think they'll definitely address either defensive tackle or one of their other positions in need. But I feel like the more guys that are gone in free agency, the more wide receiver needy teams are going to try to draft a receiver. So it's kind of a balance of, okay, the Chargers don't need a receiver anymore because they re-signed Mike Williams, but okay, somebody who was going to target Mike Williams, say the Chiefs or whoever. Oh, now they need a receiver. That's not a good example because the Chiefs are behind us in the draft, but Saints, they were going to target Mike Williams. Now they're going to go Chris Olave at 18 instead of they were going to get Mike Williams. So it's kind of a balance there. I don't think it really improves the chances. I don't think it really drops them a ton. I think it's kind of probably steady right where it is. With that kind of 1-for-1 trade of the Chargers don't need somebody, but somebody who's going to go for Mike Williams might now want a receiver earlier in the draft.
Yeah, I look at the Falcons, and we'll get into the Calvin Ridley situation here in a minute, but now the Falcons lost Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley for the 2020 year. Obviously, Julio Jones being traded to Tennessee. What receivers? They might go one up at 8, and they have a lot of other needs, but they could go up one. Like you mentioned, the Saints need one. They need a quarterback also if they don't re-sign Jameis Winston. The Eagles could take one. I don't know how likely that is, but we've seen them take 2 first-round receivers the last 2 years, and one of them in Jalen Reagor really hasn't panned out. Devontae Smith's been good, but maybe they want to get Jalen Hurts, another guy with those 3 first-round picks. So I don't know. It's tough. I think that there's still going to be at least one receiver there. I don't know who it's going to be, maybe 2, and I just don't know if New England takes one of them. Because of the cornerback position that's needed. Linebacker position is needed. And we'll get into this at the end of the episode once we get into who stood out at the combine. But there's 15, 16 receivers that I think are great additions to New England's offense. I think that there's a lot of depth in this draft class that makes me a little more comfortable dipping into the 2nd and 3rd round and taking one of them if someone were to slip than taking a first round guy and having the chance of him panning out like N'Keal Harry. So I don't know. I agree with you. I think that there's too many other glaring needs. And obviously if Jacoby Myers comes back, you're rolling with a receiving core that's not dysfunctional by any means, but it's not going to win you a Super Bowl, and it's not going to help Mac's development. And you got to, get that true number 1 guy out there that puts the fear of God into teams where they have to double team them, where they have to game plan for them. And I don't know if New England has one of those receivers yet. And then if you draft one and you can get rid of Nelson Aguilar's contract, that clears up a little bit more cap space where you can go out and sign someone else at a position of need. So I don't know. There's a lot of options at the receiver position, but the free agency route's looking very slim, and I don't know how likely the draft route is with our track record.
Yeah, and I mean, Mike Williams, I think the bad thing about this, 3 years, $60 million. He's getting $20 million annually. He was projected to get $17 million annually per PFF, which I think is probably a more reasonable number. The bad thing about the money he just got, and what concerns me about that, is the free agents that are left on the market, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, whoever. Those guys are probably going to bump their number up a little bit. Amari Cooper's going to be like, I deserve as much as Mike Williams. Why not? Or I deserve just below this, whatever he thinks. And I think that might price some of the guys like Cooper out of the Patriots price range. I know you don't have a lot of power if you're getting cut by a team. You don't have a lot of leverage necessarily over other teams, but you're also a free agent, so teams will be bidding against each other, and the highest bidder's probably going to win. So I think they'll be involved. There's been rumors they're involved in the Amari Cooper route. I almost feel like the Dolphins are a team more likely just because they have the cap space to do it. They need a receiver. They tried Will Fuller last year. It was horrible. He hardly played, if at all. That's a guy that I think the Dolphins could be targeting, and that's unfortunate because they have the money to do it and we don't. So I don't see us getting a high price free agent. I mean, the guys that are left on the board after today, Allen Robinson, Odell Beckham Jr., which he's expected to sign an extension with the Rams. Michael Gallup is expected to sign with the Cowboys. Antonio Brown, that bridge has been burned. Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk, DJ Chark, Will Fuller, Jameson Crowder. I mean, do any of these guys sound appealing to any of you watching right now? They don't sound that appealing to me. I guess the best you could say maybe is Allen Robinson if he has a reasonable contract. He's produced with terrible quarterback play his entire career. I think the Patriots were reportedly involved last year. We're looking into him before he got franchise tagged. So it seems like they like him a little bit. They're interested at least in what he can do. At this point, Robinson would not be at the top of my list, but at this point, hey, try it. Why not? With a guy like Mac Jones, with the offense the Patriots run, guys in the slot take a lot of reps, get a lot of targets as well. Maybe Robinson is a guy on the outside that Mac can kind of trust, throw it up to, whatever. He's still a very talented receiver. I know he's had his ups and downs, but he's produced pretty great numbers for the quarterback play that he's had, and being in Chicago his entire career. So I do think he's better than he's looked in Chicago, and I think that he would have a better season in New England, especially with Mac Jones at quarterback and kind of the offense they run in the run game, the balance of that offense. If they got a number one receiver like Allen Robinson, the balance between the pass and the run game is going to make this offense lethal. So Allen Robinson is about the only guy outside of Amari Cooper left that I'm interested in. And I know you don't love him necessarily, but I still am impressed with like I said, the numbers he's put up, being in Chicago, being with horrible quarterbacks, and just merry-go-round of different quarterbacks throughout his career.
Yeah, it's a thin receiver core all of a sudden with all these tags and signings that have already gone down, rumors of signings. So to say Allen Robinson is the best scares me. I wouldn't mind him, like you said. I think that he can definitely come in and get better than what he was in Chicago with that horrible quarterback play. I'm not doubting his potential, but I'm doubting his productivity to this point. And if he can get out of that, and if he can really become, a top 12 receiver in the NFL, I don't know. So, and he fits the mold. New England, like I said, they're targeting an outside receiver, someone that, is a deep threat, vertical, big frame. You look at the free agency market, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, that probably fits one of those guys. A guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk, someone like that, they don't fit what New England's looking for. And it gets to the point where I was just saying where it scares the crap out of me, where it's some of the same, right. It's the same group of receivers, body type, skill set wise, and there's no difference in what New England can do with their offense. You get a guy like Allen Robinson in the red zone, you got to be worried about the 50-50 jump ball fade that they can be thrown. You're not really going to worry about that too much with a Juju Smith-Schuster. Right? He's just not going to win those back pylon throws. So bringing in a more diverse receiver core and receiver is what is intriguing to me as, when I'm looking at this team and how they can add. That's why I think they drafted N'Keal Harry in 2019 or 2018 with that thought, and it just never panned out. So that's how I look at the receiver position, but it's scary, like you mentioned, with our track record and how New England has been developing receivers both inside and outside in the draft.
Yeah, and like you said, there's just not a lot of great scheme fits. DJ Chark is a deep threat receiver, maybe a guy who can kind of play more of that X role, but he's apparently going to get some lucrative offers for what he's projected to be price range wise. So I don't think the Patriots are going to be up there with him either. There's not a lot of great guys. Chrome here says Juju could be the best option. I don't love Juju. I don't love the antics. I don't love the drama. I know people usually clean that up when they come to New England because they don't have a choice, but he's kind of plays out of the slot more than anything usually. So that's not necessarily a position we need. I think Allen Robinson at this point is the best option, which is kind of scary. Kirk is okay. I don't think he's the best yards after catch receiver, which I know the Patriots don't necessarily always use. Michael Gallup would have been interesting, but he's not expected to be here. OBJ, same thing. Robinson's the last guy who's on that great to elite tier of wide receiver. He's going to probably command some decent money, but he didn't have a phenomenal year last year. So maybe his number drops down. He's projected to get $15 million annually. If the Patriots want to take a shot on him, get him here for the 3-4 years and spread that cap hit out a little bit to make it not so bad. Maybe create some cap space this year, add a corner and free agency, whatever you want to do, however you want to scheme things up. So I think Robinson is an interesting option. It seems like the best one yet because all these other guys are pretty much gone. They're between franchise tags and projected extensions and all that stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about we just hit on this. Franchise tag players, second year in a row, Tampa Bay's franchising Chris Godwin, who me and you both agreed with would be a dream fit in New England. I never thought it was really realistic, whether he was going to get a big-time contract extension or I didn't think that he was going to get franchise tagged again by Tampa Bay. I thought that they'd work out an extension before they franchise tagged him, but they get him for one more year, and we'll kind of be going through this same thing next year if they don't get another contract. So maybe he's a guy that New England looks at just down the road in one more year, but he won't be an option this year. What are your thoughts on that? And how does New England, move on from here? Kind of like what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it didn't seem realistic. I think we both acknowledged that, but it was a dream scenario for both of us. If we could have got Chris Godwin, that fits this offense seamlessly. It would have been a perfect transition, perfect fit. A guy who can do a bunch of different things, play inside, outside. He can be productive from both different roles, and good red zone threat, good threat down the entire part of the field. So I think he would have been perfect. It's kind of unfortunate. It sounds like they're working on an extension. They couldn't get it done, so they franchise tagged him. Do you know how many times can you franchise tag a guy before you're not allowed to can you just keep franchise him the rest of his career? Yeah, so I thought so too. So maybe they're done after this, but it seems like he's not going to get an opportunity to sign elsewhere until maybe next offseason. So maybe then they target him. But it's kind of unfortunate. He was a guy that we both loved, would have fit here perfectly, and just isn't going to end up here because he's getting franchise tagged.
Yeah, so I think you can franchise tag him. Let's see. It costs more each consecutive year. So obviously Chris Godwin's getting more this year than a normal. So who's another receiver that franchise tagged?
Everybody's saying twice down here. So I think you're right. I think it is twice.
Yeah.
I thought it was twice too,
but it's more the second year you do it. So let's say the baseline this year for a receiver that's being franchise tagged is 18 million. He gets more because this is his second franchise tag. So he's not the standard franchise tagged receiver. If you get franchised a second time, you get more money the second time than what is going for the normal receivers, is what I'm pretty sure it is. But
okay.
Anyways, he'll be hitting free agent next year. We'll see how it goes, unless they re-sign him. But yeah, it would have been a dream. I think that this is one of the things that Patriots fans wanted to happen so bad that it tainted our vision of how unlikely it really was going to happen. And he would have demanded a ton of money, and we've talked about it. Getting both him and J.C. Jackson back, or one, is still hard with the cap space we had. We would have had to have made a lot of moves just to clear up enough cap to bring them back, and it could have happened in maybe a sign and trade deal. Brian asked right here, how surprised are you that the Patriots didn't at least franchise tag JC and trade him? We talked about that, whether it was to Atlanta for Calvin Ridley or, get a first-round pick out of him for something. But what are your thoughts on this? And we'll get into JC Jackson a little more, but what are your thoughts on at least not franchise tagging JC and trading him for a receiver?
Even if it wasn't a receiver, even if it was draft capital, I would have preferred a receiver, but even if it wasn't, it just makes no sense to me. All the reports out there, and the Patriots know better than anybody. They know how close or how far apart they were with JC on what number he wanted, what they were willing to pay him. So they know better than anybody. It doesn't make sense to me why, if JC is going to leave, why do you not just franchise tag him and get value back for it? I'm not shocked that they didn't franchise tag him, because this is what I figured would happen. This is what the Patriots do. They do weird stuff like this all the time. That doesn't make any sense to anybody else, but they do it and they move on and they end up being all right usually, but it doesn't make any sense. You could have got at the minimum a second round pick for JC Jackson back after you franchise tag him, and you don't. That's the part that's most shocking to me. Obviously, it stinks that JC is going to be gone, but what frustrates me more than anything, like we've said, is getting no compensation back, getting no value in return. I know next year they'll get a late third-round comp pick if he does sign with another team and if we don't re-sign anybody else, but that's not guaranteed. If we sign somebody to replace JC, we don't get that third-round comp pick. It might be a later pick, or we might not get a pick at all. So nothing's guaranteed in that sense. So I don't understand why you don't franchise tag him. You control where he goes, so you get to say, okay, I don't want him to go to Miami. I don't want him to go in the AFC. I want to send him to the NFC. Okay, he's going to the NFC, and we're getting a second round pick back or a receiver, whatever. So that's a part of this that doesn't make sense to me. Bill probably just wants to get the next average corner and make him elite. Yeah, you're not wrong. He's gonna try to find another undrafted free agent and turn him into J.C. Jackson. So no, you can't keep relying on undrafted free agents to turn out and be star cornerbacks. It's not realistic. You can't keep doing it. So eventually, watch next year, we're gonna get an undrafted corner and he's gonna be better than J.C. Jackson and we'll be all right. But you can't keep relying on that. So I just think if you have an asset and you're gonna lose him, try to get the most value you can for him, and that would have been franchise tagging and trading him.
Yeah, I don't know how we wouldn't have gotten a first or a early second round pick, probably a top 50 pick for a JC Jackson out. There's no corner in the draft that would come in and make an immediate impact for JC Jackson. So you're looking at, a team, maybe Atlanta doesn't want to go cornerback in the first round, but they want to trade their second round pick. That's like pick 40 or something for him. I would have taken that for JC Jackson. And now New England has pick 54 in the second round, pick 40 in the second, and pick 21. Like, you can get the three positions you need: corner, receiver, linebacker right there, and top 50 picks, and then 54. So I don't know. It's frustrating. I just, the biggest thing is, and you said it, the cap is crap, and everyone's saying that. Like, if New England wanted to re-sign JC Jackson or wanted to do anything with him, they would have. And I don't know if this is just stubbornness on Bill's part, like we've seen before, where he's just saying, "Oh, I don't need JC Jackson. I can do it without him," blah, blah, blah. And I hate that mentality, because it's going to bite us in the ass one day, and it's going to suck if it's this year and it's on Mac's second year where we're trying to develop him, and all of a sudden we go from 10-7 and a playoff team to 7-10 or 6-11. Like, it's going to suck if all of a sudden we're at a losing record because we didn't keep a dude in-house and give him the money. And so I hope that it doesn't turn out that way, because now our draft and offseason plans are totally different. This makes a huge hole that we have to fill that was not planned for. New England wanted them to go get a wide receiver one, which I think is great, and I still think that they should look into it, and there should be a route that they do that, whether it's in the draft or free agency. But you just can't do that, because New England's, they've never had a true wide receiver one when they've won their championships. When they had the last one, it was really Randy Moss, and we didn't even win that year. But they've always had a lockdown corner on the outside that's made the defense successful, and we don't have one this year. And I don't know if there's going to be a true cornerback in the draft that's going to come out and be able to lock down Stephon Diggs any better than Patriots fans thought JC Jackson did. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of the move at all. At least get something out of him. At least I wanted him back, but it is what it is now. And I guess we can cross our fingers, and maybe he goes out and tests the market and people aren't giving him what he thinks, and he comes back and takes $17 million a year. It's a possibility, but I don't know how likely it is.
And the thing is, like, I understand your frustration with Bill and the mentality that he has sometimes to not pay these players. It's frustrating to me too, but also it's clear as day. I don't remember anybody who wanted to get paid more than JC Jackson does this year. He doesn't care. I don't think he cares where he goes. All he's posting on his story is about getting the bag, getting all this money. He's asking for more money than Jalen Ramsey. He wants to be the number one corner paid in the NFL. I don't blame Bill Belichick for not wanting to give him that money. He doesn't want to be stuck in a giant contract with a guy that can't cover the best receiver in their own division. I know we disagree on that a little bit, but that's so much money. You want to pay JC Jackson $22 million a year?
Not 21 million, but I don't think he's going to get that. Who's going to give him 21 million a year?
That's what he's asking for.
I know that's what he's asking for, but what's he going to get? If he goes out and he legitimately gets 18 million a year, I think every New England fan should want him to sign for that.
I will be upset if he signs to $18 million annually. I'll be upset. We can come back on here and I will be frustrated.
Now, I know he's asking for Jalen Ramsey type money. I don't think he's going to get it, though. I think that he's, like you mentioned, he wants the money so bad, but I don't think he's going to get the money. I think that he's going to be in for a rude awakening. He's either going to come back to New England and say, okay, well, I'll take the 18 million, or Bill's going to say, no, you lost out, and he's going to take that somewhere else. I don't know. I think any team paying 20 million is overpaying for him, but I don't think he's going to get it.
All it takes is one team. And from all the reports, it sounds like he's got options. He's got plenty of people who are going to be bidding for him. Apparently the Raiders really want him. I guess the Niners are involved too, the Dolphins and one other team. Chargers were the other team. Chargers still have a lot of money. They want to be able to lock up the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Raiders. They got some talented receivers in that division. So there's a bunch of guys that are going to want JC Jackson. And I think somebody's probably going to overpay for him, and it's not going to be us, and we're going to get nothing back in return. And that's the most frustrating part If he signed somewhere for 17, $18 million, I'll be like, all right, we probably could have done that. Like, come on. But if he's signing 19, 20, 21, no, thank you. I'm sorry. I love JC. I really do. It's too much money. It's too much money for JC. And we'll touch on this question. I have a question we haven't talked about yet that I'm going to bring up after this, related to JC and cornerbacks and stuff. Yeah, watch the Cowboys overpay. They probably will pair him and Trayvon Diggs together. Do you think Shaun Wade could get a starting job? This is one that's interesting to me, but I'll let you touch on it first.
Yeah, I think he can. I think he's the most likely one for me to step up and get a starting job, unless we go out and get a free agent corner, one in the draft early in the draft, which is very likely. But Shaun Wade, highly regarded coming out of college, at least his 2019-2020 year, and then he moved to outside corner and he struggled a lot in his 2020 year, and then got drafted in the 4th round. But I see a lot. I like his length. I think that Shaun Wade can come in, and this can be a guy that Bill can develop. Now, I wouldn't bank on it, but if you're telling me choose between Shaun Wade or Jawan Williams next year, Shaun Wade 10 times out of 10. So
okay, if you're telling me to choose between the worker at the Arby's cashier right now and Jawan Williams, I'll probably take the cashier as well.
So no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've seen some of those Arby's cashiers. Trust me, they be suit for a 3 technique a little better than a cornerback.
You're not wrong, but that's how I feel about Jawan Williams. So go ahead. Sorry. No,
I think he can develop into something. I really do. I like the trade. We didn't give up much for him. He was a 4th round pick from Baltimore. He gave us depth this year. Never played. I'm excited to see him go through a full camp in the system. Let Bill develop him, see what he can do. He's got the length to be a good press man corner for us. So I think he's someone to definitely keep our eye out on, and he can sneak up. But if you're telling me that Jalen Mills is cornerback 1 and Shaun Wade's cornerback 2 going into week 1, I'm shitting bricks. And I know you are too. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I was still, we talked about it at length before the season started. Even with JC Jackson, we need more corner depth. We need to add a corner. We need more cornerback depth. We said it a million times, and they didn't add it, and it was a problem. You saw it bite us in the ass late in the season, in the playoffs, and throughout certain games that it wasn't good enough. And I am intrigued about Shaun Wade. They traded for him for a reason. They didn't give up a ton, but they like the idea, and they're great. I don't think they're better at developing any position beside better than cornerback and maybe offensive line. But cornerback is a big one that they're really good at developing raw talent from. And I think he has some talent. Obviously, he had his ups and downs in college and had a great year, had a bad year, kind of playing it out of position, it seemed like. But it's certainly interesting. And we'll see how he does a full year in the system and some more time developing here and all that stuff. But I definitely think he's a guy to keep an eye on. I don't think I don't trust him to go out there and be our number 1 corner, obviously. But I think he could compete for some minutes and pass Jawan Williams and be more involved in this defense for sure. So that is exciting. And I will say, Brian, we're not forgetting about your comment about the cornerbacks in the draft. We'll touch on that in a minute. But before we touch on that, I want to ask you, what do you think? I know the Patriots have recently been a heavy man coverage system. They've had J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis before that, Aqib Talib. They've had all these man coverage corners. Do you think they have any interest in changing the system, being more of a zone coverage system, changing the scheme with losing J.C. Jackson? They played a lot of zone last year. That was kind of because their cornerback depth, they couldn't man up on everybody. Do you think that's something they'd be interested in changing to, at least for a short time, or maybe looking to switch their long term? Or do you think they're still going to try to be a more man coverage heavy system and just live with the warts of some of these guys that can't cover as well as JC Jackson and Stephon Gilmore?
I think they're going to mix it in more. I think you're going to see a lot more zone coverage this year than man coverage, which I don't hate. You look at the quarterbacks and how they've been stopped, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, these quarterbacks, you just sit in cover 2 and you let your 4D lineman get pass rush. Don't let the quarterback get comfortable in the pocket and you get sacks on him. So I think that there is definitely a possibility that we see more zone coverage this year. I don't think Bill goes away from it. That's his bread and butter. New England loves to run a 1 rat. So they pretty much have the safety deep middle, man everyone else up. They call crosser. So anything that's crossing, they have the low hole safety player take him, and then the other guy plays hole. They're just passing everything off. That's what New England's been known for. And then they bring blitzes off of it, and they get creative with it. I don't think they're going to change the base of the defense, but I definitely think that this year you can't be running man as much as you have been in the last 5 years with the lack of cornerbacks that you have.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing that's interesting is it changes things up completely. If this team wants to transition into zone compared to man, they're targeting two completely different types of corners. Like if you want to target more of a man-heavy guy in the draft, you'll go for a Kaiir Elam or Andrew Booth. If you want to go more zone, Trent McDuffie, guys like that. So it changes things completely depending on how they want to play their scheme. And I think if you're playing a zone, if you have bad corners, you might be able to get away with that more playing zone coverage than man. If you're playing man coverage, your corners can get exposed. Not that they can't necessarily in zone coverage as well, but it's a little easier to hide some of your struggles as a cornerback when you're in zone coverage because you're not manned up one-on-one right with the guy the entire way for his route. You can kind of read things out a little differently. So it's an interesting thought. I wonder if they'll keep more zone this season like they did last year. I wonder if they'll kind of keep that same thing and maybe transition into man coverage once they find more corner depth and once they have a guy that they feel like can lock down a number one. And if they don't, maybe they double the number one receiver. Maybe they double Stephon Diggs and then they put their number one corner on a guy like Gabe Davis or whoever is the Bills' top second wide receiver next year. So I definitely think it's an intriguing idea. And we've seen the Patriots play zone heavy before. I mean, they didn't always play man coverage. They didn't always have these guys who were locked on number ones. They have most of the time, but they have had years where they played more zone because they didn't have the talent. So I wonder if this is a year that we see kind of similar to last season.
Yeah, and zone coverage, if you can run it right and effectively, it's hard for quarterbacks to beat. If you can get pressure with your 4 down linemen and you can drop the other 7 into pass coverage, it's hard. And that's the key is, do we have 4 linemen? I think Judon and Barmore we trust that can get pressure. Are there 2 other ones that we trust that make a super good 4-man pass rush? I don't know. Now you're talking, do we need to go spend money on Chandler Jones to get someone here? I mean, who's the 2 other guys that can get pressure on a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Russell Wilson, and bring him down? I don't know if we have 4 guys. If Josh Uche breaks out,
that's what I was going to say. Uche, but the thing with Uche is he's just, I mean, on 3rd down and long, he pins his ears back and he goes and he's great. But he can't defend the run as well. And he's also not super sound in setting the edge and being smart with the rush lanes with a quarterback who's mobile like Josh Allen. That's another thing about zone coverage compared to man. If you're in man coverage, your back is turned to the quarterback and they can break out for some long runs. If you're in zone, you're sitting in spots. Your front side is to the quarterback. You can see everything that's going on and you can read and react. So that's one other interesting thing about playing zone coverage compared to man. Obviously, if you can man up on receivers one-on-one and you have good sound rush lanes and you keep the quarterback in the pocket that's mobile, that's a great way to shut down quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen the Patriots do it forever, but there's more than one way to win in the NFL, and it's going to be interesting to see if they change that up at all.
For sure. Well, we'll get into some of these off-season questions. We see some draft questions and some other ones later, but let's talk about the other big news that we had this week. Chris Godwin, Patriots fans, we all loved. Maybe after Chris Godwin, we said Calvin Ridley was the guy that Patriots fans want next. Maybe some people had him as the first one, but you would have had to give up probably a second round pick for him. But he will be suspended for the 2022 season due to betting on games after he left the Falcons. What's your take on that, and how big of a blow is that for the Patriots?
I was very disappointed. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, really? We were all super excited. This seemed like the most realistic option out of any because of his situation, because of the Patriots' needs, and because of how the Patriots feel about Calvin Ridley. Personally, I feel like a year is a long time for a suspension for, I know it's a business. I know that side of it is what it is, but they've suspended guys for a lot less time who have beat their kids, beat their domestic violence, all that stuff. They suspended guys for 2 games. They don't even suspend guys at all. They suspended for 4 games. And this is a full 17-game season plus playoffs and maybe even more. That's a long time for gambling on a couple of things. And apparently it was only $1,500. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what Calvin Ridley said, which was funny to see some of his tweets afterwards. But that's unfortunate for a guy who's young, talented, in his prime right now, probably. And he's missed the past. He's going to miss by the time he's back, he's going to have missed the past year and a half, a year and 3/4 of games. And that stinks. I feel like he would have been a good option for the Patriots this season to build and progress along with Mac Jones in this offense. I felt like it would have made this offense so much better. He was on a reasonable deal, only $11 million to the cap. I thought it would have been great. So I was very disappointed to see how Calvin Ridley's situation played out. And when I saw this come across Twitter the other day, I was very frustrated. I was like, this seemed like the perfect fit. And yet again, we get our hopes up for a number one receiver. Doesn't happen. So that was frustrating.
I was shocked too by the year suspension. If he's getting suspended a year for this, then Nancy Pelosi and politicians that trade stocks should be kicked out of office because there's no difference in it. If you're trading stocks as a politician or you're betting on games as an athlete, it's the same thing. They're worried about insider information. You can 1,000% control the market as a politician with policies you put in. Now, Calvin Ridley, it seems a lot less likely that he could control games that he wasn't playing in, but maybe he has contacts. So I get it. I'm not saying he shouldn't be suspended if he did bet on games, but a year, crazy to me. But I agree with you. I was super disappointed. I think a lot of Patriots fans were. I didn't think it was real. I'm like, no way. Like, you serious? I don't. You hear of this like Pete Rose? It's like a Pete Rose situation where he's being out of the Hall of Fame and stuff like this. But it's crazy. It sucks. It would have been a perfect scenario to get Calvin Ridley with Mac Jones, 2 Alabama guys, and someone that New England wanted when he was in the draft, and they took Isaiah Wynn over him, and then he got there before, or he got taken by Atlanta before they were up again, and then they took Sony Michel. So it seemed too good to be true. It's always something with the Patriots. There's always something that holds New England back from getting these guys. It's crazy. So
it's always the weirdest stuff too.
Our luck, man. It's nuts.
What do you think is reason? Like 4 games? What do you think is reasonable for that? I mean, they literally have suspended multiple people 2 to 4 games for beating the crap out of their significant others. It's like, okay, you just give them a slap on the wrist for that, but you're going to get an entire year. I mean, 17 games plus playoffs.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Well, I think it depends on if they go back and look, and he'll probably appeal a suspension. But if they go back and look and say, okay, it was $1,500 and it was on 1 or 2 bets, then it should probably be 2 or 3 games. Now, if he's betting millions of dollars every week, then it's different. But it depends on how. So, like, you're not going to punish a guy that kills someone. You're not going to punish a serial killer the same as you punish someone that kills one person. You're going to give the serial killer probably the chair and one person maybe 25 to life or something. But you don't punish them the same. It depends on what their crime is. So that's my thing. That might have been a really bad analogy for some people bringing murder into this. And I'm just trying to get my point.
That escalated very quickly. Wow.
I'm just trying to get my point across, right? Like,
we're just talking about sports gambling, Jace. Sorry, geez.
It depends on what you do. Like, if you're only bet $1,500 and you bet on 1 game or whatever it is, that's what they find out. You can't hold them up to a year. You look at, I mean, Deshaun Watson, who's out indefinitely, and a year, 100%, because he can't play legally, and you never know when he'll come back. But I mean, it's crazy that he's getting a year for what he did, if that's really what it is. Now, there might be more to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Brian, Axel, and Chrome, we'll touch on your questions right after this. But one more piece of Patriots news I want to get your thoughts on. Kyle Van Noy. The Patriots cut linebacker Kyle Van Noy yesterday, and it created just under $5 million in cap space. What were your thoughts on the move? It's funny because we did some episodes about how the Patriots could clear cap space, and I think this was the only one that we didn't include on the list. Literally the only one that was possibly an option that we didn't include on the list. And I had thought about it, and I said, maybe we'll add this in there. But I was like, Van Noy had good production. $5 million isn't that great for a guy with his leadership and stuff like that. So I didn't think it made the most sense compared to some of the other ones that seemed like no brainers. But what were your initial thoughts on Van Noy getting cut by the Patriots?
Yeah, this one hurts for me. I've loved Van Noy. I'm a BYU guy. I live, not an hour away from BYU. So I've watched him in college. I loved him when he was at the Lions. When we traded for him, I was ecstatic. And it's more of a leadership role for me at this point. Like, what he brings to the defense, leadership, physicality in the locker room, that's going to be missed more than his on-field stuff. Now, he played better than Hightower did. He played better than some other linebackers that we're not going to bring back or we're going to let go. So it is shocking in that sense. He's out of his prime, that's for sure. But $5 million, like you said, we just bring him back from Miami. He's a scheme fit. We know he's always going to be consistent. It's not going to be consistently good, but he's going to be consistent. And it was a shocker to me. And then again, you look at it and you say, Bill always does stuff like this. Like, You should just go watch the video of what we did, like you said, and the ones that we mentioned aren't going to happen, and every other possibility that we didn't mention is probably what's going to happen. So he's going to make the unexpected cuts, and this is one of them, but it's a way that you save $5 million. It depends on how New England goes and spends that $5 million. If that's to bring in a Bobby Wagner or some other guy that can fill a role, then it's a little different. But I was definitely a little shocked to see Van Noy after, I think he started the year off bad, but he finished strong.
Yeah, Pat's region here. Patriots draft Cole Kelly, QB out of southeastern Louisiana.
FCS Player of the Year, baby.
He looked good. He was slinging that at the combine. He did look
pretty good.
Was it me? Was it him? I don't know. Same name. It's all right. Whatever. Yeah, but back to Kyle Van Noy. I was surprised as well. I didn't see it coming. I thought Van Noy had good production. He was pretty consistent. One of our best edge setting players. He's very sound in his technique and in his role of what he does. He plays the Patriot system pretty well. He does what Belichick wants him to do for the most part, it seems like. With keeping QBs in the pocket, he had his moments where he wasn't as good, but he also had games like against the Falcons where he dominated. That was his best game of the year. He looked extremely productive. He was really, really good. So I was a little surprised. I feel like there's easier ways to create $5 million in cap space if you really want it. I've heard people talk about, oh, the Patriots don't just make a move to make a move. They didn't have to make this move today. Why'd they make it? I think that it's because they are tight with Van Noy. They've had relationships with him in the past. They want him to have time to go sign somewhere before free agency hits. And he can sign wherever he wants right now. So I think that was just a courtesy to him. I don't necessarily think there's a big move coming afterwards like some other people do. I hope so. I hope there's a move after that kind of makes this make more sense. But it is what it is. I'm not super mad about it. I'm confused a little bit, but it's all right. If they trust Ronnie Perkins, if they trust Josh Uche to continue to develop, if they trust that they have somebody in-house or somebody in the draft that's going to be able to fill his role, that gives me confidence at least. So that's what I try to look at with some of these situations is, okay, doesn't make sense in the beginning, but let's think about it. Maybe they have confidence in one of these guys like Ronnie Perkins or somebody that we haven't seen a ton of or somebody they're going to draft that they think they're going to get, whatever. So that's how I try to look at it. But this is one of the most frustrating things about Bill Belichick is that he never does what people expect him to do. And some of the time, it doesn't make any sense. Like right now, if they don't trade Isaiah Wynn, that makes no sense to me. That saves the most money very quickly for a guy who's not good and not worth the contract he's going to be getting. Trade him, get assets back, re-sign Trent Brown, re-sign a different tackle, whatever you want to do. But if you want to clear cap space, that's the easiest way to do it. We laid out some really easy, great options. And if he doesn't do any of those, that doesn't make sense to me because some of them are no-brainers, in my opinion. So that's what's frustrating about Bill sometimes. He never does what people think he's going to do. He always has to do the thing that's going to take people by surprise, catch people off guard, but it usually ends up working out. So it's hard to hate on him for it, but it was a little surprising seeing Van Noy cut for his production. I feel like his production was worth more than the $5 million it saves.
Yeah, and I mean, there's linebackers out there that can be replaced by Kyle Van Noy and his $5 million, but they're going to cost more. You look at Devondre Campbell. I think he's a guy that I'd like New England to go out and sign and possibly bring him in. Alua Khan from the Falcons, he's another guy that could come in, and he had a dang good year last year, and we'll see how they use that $5 million. If it's to go get Bobby Wagner or something, it's a no-brainer. I mean, yeah, he's playing better football than Kyle Van Noy will probably, and you can get him for a 1-year deal and then get rid of him, or a 2-year deal and see what it is. So it's frustrating. It's a head scratcher type of one for a lot of Patriots fans, but it's Bill, honestly. I don't know what else Patriots fans expect. It's just what Bill does. So Bill is a living person. Yes, it's true. Expect the unexpected. Did anyone see Cam getting cut? People might have thought Mac would start, but did anyone see Cam Newton getting cut? I don't think they did. So that was a crazy one too. And then Brian, like you said, our younger linebackers, they obviously trust someone. If it's Cameron McGrone, if you re-sign Juwan Bentley, Ronnie Perkins, they obviously have trust with who they have in there. Raekwon McMillan's a guy that they raved about in camp last year. So there's guys out there that can fill this role, and they can develop into a better Kyle Van Noy, but that's a big if. You're saying if they do, then we're in good shape. And I'm just not in the game of playing ifs when you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal and he made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Sanchez says, would you grab Bobby Wagner? We touched on this earlier. Both of us said yes for the right price. If he's demanding top linebacker money, like I don't know. You said he was getting paid 20 mil this year. If he wants 15 to 20, I wouldn't. But if he's looking for a cheaper deal, maybe a prove it deal or whatever he wants to do, I would love to have the Patriots come pick him up. So that would be exciting. Let's see. Also, this is a different position on defense, but I would love to get Steven Nelson. His projected contract is 2 years, $7 million annually. I wouldn't mind it. He's graded out better as a zone corner in PFF. He can play man as well, but I mean, I wouldn't mind it. Whoever they take at corner, I'm going to trust for the most part. Jalen Mills, we were all kind of surprised, didn't know what he would have as a role, and he worked out well. So I trust if the Patriots bring in a corner, I'm going to have faith in them because I think that there's no better position. There's no position they're better at evaluating than cornerback, and so I'll trust basically whoever they bring in. Do you have any thoughts on him or any other guys you want to talk about for that?
The one that just keeps coming up for me that makes too much sense. The cornerback class at the top end really isn't that.
Not a lot of guys.
I'd say free agency wise. The one guy that just keeps sticking out to me, Carlton Davis. I don't think that New England's going to give him the money if they don't give J.C. Jackson the money. So you skip past him. I'm going Javarius Ward out of Kansas City. I think he's a good press man corner. He's only 26 years old. They're projecting him at $10 million a year. I think that he's a guy that can come in. I'd feel comfortable with him. He's played big snaps for KC, obviously, in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. He's the guy that just sticks out to me that probably is the biggest scheme fit if New England wants to stay in a man coverage one. If you want to move more to zone a little bit, Casey Hayward, he'll be a cheap dude on maybe a 1 or 2 year deal because he's 32. He's a guy that had a great year last year, maybe one of his better years in the NFL. He can come in, play cheap, and like we talked about, bridge a gap and who's coming in, whether it's a rookie or someone that we sign. So it's not intriguing, the free agency market. That's why I think you have to go someone early in the draft class and get them in the system to develop them. The one that just keeps sticking out to me is Javarius Ward. It's a no-brainer for me. I think that he's going to be on a reasonable contract. Maybe you look at him and you say he's only 26. You could sign him on a 4 year deal. Maybe he's to play his best football. And that's what Bill loves to do, is get guys before they're playing their best or after, get them on bargain deals and develop them and then let them go, like we're seeing with J.C. Jackson and some of those guys. So that's the cornerback that stands out to me.
I agree. Same here. We've touched on that, but I think if you're looking to keep playing man coverage, I think he's going to be a guy that can fill in. Obviously, having him and Jalen Mills as your 1-2 punch is not the most exciting. I think he's more of a number 2 type of corner, but I think that Bill brings the best out of a lot of these guys and puts them in situations to succeed and to have success. So I think he's the best option for them if they're looking for a value corner. Like you said, $10 million annually is his projection right now. I think that's great. And I agree with you as well on Casey Hayward. He's projected $6.5 million. If you want to play zone, if you want to transition more to zone coverage, he'd be a great fit. Cheap deal. Played great last year, like you said. So I would love either one of those. I would say Ward more likely, just because I think those want to keep playing man coverage, but either one of those guys would be good. Let's see.
And then if you're talking linebacker too, I mean, where was this comment? It was Brian, or no, who was it that asked?
Draft linebacker
Alex.
pretty deep, that one.
Yeah, no, this one. He asked, what are you guys' key moves for New England here? We just talked about the ones that we kind of have for the cornerback position. Now, we'll get into the draft stuff still, so kind of delay this question. But if we're talking linebacker in the free agency group, I love Devondre Campbell. I think he's the second highest graded linebacker last year. He's going to be 29, so he's not going to probably want a massive contract. They're projecting him at 2 years, $9 million. That's not horrible. If you scroll down, I mentioned Aluakon out of Atlanta. He's 27, a little raw. I think he can come in. The one that I like, he was a high pick. He's got big size, someone that New England I think would fit. Leighton Vander Esch, I don't know. He's 25. He's young. They're projecting him at $8.5 million a year. And then the other one down here that I'm scrolling to, Jayon Brown. He's a 27-year-old. He moves fast. There's better linebackers, in my opinion. Now, they're not going to be big name linebackers, but they're going to come in. They're probably going to be cheap. They're going to be able to play some good minutes in the linebacker room and maybe bridge the gap on who we draft. But the Devondre Campbell, Luakon, Leighton Vander Esch, and then obviously throw Bobby Wagner in there now entices me a lot more than maybe some of the cornerbacks on the market in the free agency.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're looking to, so this is what's interesting. If they don't see a wide receiver they love in free agency, maybe they'll say, okay, you know what? We're going to get Devondre Campbell and Javarius Ward in free agency, cover 2 spots on defense, and then take a Chris Olave with our first pick in the draft or something like that. So maybe they'll go that route. I think it's going to be I don't think they'll even add a top receiver. I think they'll probably just focus on defense in the draft and free agency. But Devondre Campbell would be great. He, like you said, he's a little bit older, 29. So he's projected 2-year contract, $9 million annually. That's not too bad. I think he's a 3-down linebacker who can play the system well. I think he'd fit in seamlessly. So him and Ward, I'd say, were the top 2 guys on defense that I'd like to add to this team in free agency if those are the 2 spots that they're adding to. So I like both those guys. I wouldn't mind either one. If you had to pick one or the other, which guy would you pick?
Ward.
Yeah.
I like the
bigger hole.
I like the draft class at linebacker, and we'll get into this. Someone asked who it was, Fergie. We haven't gotten into our combine standouts yet, so stay tuned for that. We'll get to that, and I like the back end of the draft class, 2nd, 3rd round, more than I like the corners. I think that if New England really wants to go out there and get a cornerback that's going to come in and compete right away, you probably have to go with one of the top 5, maybe 6 corners. The other guys are going to be projects, which isn't bad, but we need a cornerback now if we don't sign one. So I'd probably go with Ward and then draft a linebacker that's younger, faster, can stop the run, play the pass. I think that that's a position that you can hit on late in the draft.
Yeah, and one interesting question while we're on the secondary. If we don't re-sign Devin McCourty, who replaces him?
Yeah, well, if J.C. Jackson's staying here and then we still draft a cornerback, I'd say Jalen Mills might be one that can be moved back there. But I think now it's interesting, and there's been rumors maybe Shaun Wade moves back. I think that you need to try him at corner now. So do you move Kyle Duggar or Adrian Phillips into the free safety role? I think that now re-signing McCourty for at least 1 more year becomes very, very important, and it's going to be a cheap deal. But for his leadership and for what he brings to the table, he still has some good football in him. I think it's important in that secondary. There's not many leaders in that secondary. If he's gone and J.C. Jackson, I love Adrian Phillips, but he's only been here for 3 years, and I don't know if he's going to come in and be that true leader right away. Kyle Duggar seems like a quiet guy. Jalen Mills doesn't seem like a true leader. So I'd question the leadership on the defense if McCourty's not back. That gets really scary.
Yeah, and I mean, they just drafted Joshua Bledsoe out of what, Missouri, right?
Missouri,
I think he was from. Yeah. So last season they drafted him. He didn't play this year, obviously, because due to injury. I've heard that they like him from some reports from Patriot sources or whatever. Maybe he's a guy they like to fill that role. I mean, Shaun Wade, maybe they move him back, like you said, but McCourty, I think, is one of the higher free agents on the importance list for the Patriots, because like you said, not only just in that secondary, there's not a lot of leadership if JC and McCourty are gone, but on that defense, if you're going to lose Hightower, Bentley, Jamie Collins, Devin McCourty, JC Jackson, all in 1 year, your longest tenured guys is like a Lawrence Guy, like Dietrich Wise, like those kind of players. And that's not necessarily usually usually a linebacker, safety, corner. Usually those guys, you need somebody on that second level of defense to be a leader as well, because the defensive line is going to have their own kind of room. They have their own meetings. They're going to have a leader there, but you need somebody in the secondary. I think if we lose JC Jackson, like you said, Devin McCourty shoots up on the list of priority free agents we need to re-sign for this season. So that one's going to be tough. If we lose him, I don't really know where we're going to go. I don't feel confident. This draft doesn't have a ton of really talented safeties. There's some intriguing prospects, but I don't think any that are going to be year one contributors of jump right in, seamless fit. Obviously, nobody's going to be a seamless fit after McCourty because he's been here so long. He knows the ins and outs of everything, but that's why you need to keep him. He's still playing football this year. He needs to be on the Patriots for sure.
Yeah, I'd hate to see him anywhere else if he's playing.
I would as well. That's a guy like Edelman and players like that you would love to retire, a Patriot, Slater, all those guys. But all right, let's you want to touch on some of these questions a little bit further back that we missed so far. One thing from Brian, honestly, I feel like we're going to trade down and get a second round pick, an additional third round pick, and maybe a late pick as well. We've touched on this, but go ahead and give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I know Patriots fans are going to hate it, but it makes sense. I mean, if no one's there at 21 that you just love, and it could happen. Now, I think that there is going to be a guy there that could come in and New England could draft and make an impact, but I've seen a lot of trade downs into the late first, early second, and you get an extra third, maybe an extra fifth with it. And now instead of sitting at 6 picks, you have 8 picks. And with the holes on the team, that makes it where you can double dip at either corner or linebacker, or you can double dip at receiver or still improve positions. So I think it's very likely, and it's going to suck on draft night if it happens and when it happens, probably. But I think this is the one time that me as a Patriots fan, like, it makes sense. There's a lot of, this is a deep class. This is a super deep draft class at a lot of positions. And you can find guys in the second and third round that are going to slip. Guys are going to reach on quarterbacks, hopefully. And maybe you can get a guy as a second pick. I don't know. I'm with it. I would love to see, like someone mentioned, Andrew Booth or Chris Olave at 21. It would be a very great immediate impact, but you might be able to find guys that can contribute to and get more value in second and more picks later in the draft if you trade out at 21.
And I'm one of those people who doesn't like trading down. I hate when we trade down. I feel like anytime you trade down, you're getting a lesser prospect, which you are. It's the point of this usually. This is one draft where I think Patriots fans should be hesitant to be upset if they trade down, because I think there's a lot of depth in this class. The top end talent, if that's gone, if defensively, if Andrew Booth is gone, if Jordan Davis is gone, and then you switch Chris Olave, different receivers, maybe a Jameson Williams or whoever you like at receiver. If those top 4 guys are gone, Devin Lloyd, maybe you throw in there. We'll talk about his combine a little bit later. But if there's probably 4 players total that I would be happy picking at 21. Outside of those players, if they're gone, trade back, get more assets. We're already low on picks this year. Trade back into the second round. You can get, there's a lot of, just touch on Travis Jones, Chad Mama. There's a bunch of different linebackers in that second round, along with a guy like John Mechie as a wide receiver. There's so much talent in that second round, rounds 2 to 3 at linebacker, defensive line, wide receiver. There's a bunch of different talent and depth to this class. So if we can just keep acquiring more assets, if we trade back and get 2 second-round picks for our first, or if we get a late first and a third, or a second and a third, early second and a third, whatever, I think that's great. I wouldn't be upset with that, because there's so much talent and there's so many different guys, and especially with the amount of holes that we have defensively, we need corner, linebacker, maybe edge now, or outside linebacker with Van Noy. We need wide receiver. Maybe we need a tackle, depending on what they do with Isaiah Wynn, Trent Brown. So there's a decent amount of holes on this team, and I think this draft is deep at some of the positions of need. So I think if you trade back, you can get more players at those positions of need.
Yeah, it makes too much sense. There's holes to fill now, and we have 6 picks this year. We have one in the first, second, third, and fourth, and then we have 2 in the 6th. And I see New England going into the draft and wanting to acquire more picks, and whether that's trading N'Keal Harry and getting an extra 5th or a 6th, or trading Isaiah Wynn and getting something. Those are ways to get more picks too on draft night. But I think that it's likely that they trade down, and I'm not against it. I don't hate it. I think that there's guys that slip to the second and third round all the time that contribute and are superstars in the league now. Just because it's not a first round draft pick does not mean that it's not going to be a superstar, and it might not be an immediate superstar. But if you want to look at the big picture, I know New England fans want to win now, but this team still is like 2 or 3 years away. There's a lot of positions that need to be filled, and there's a lot of guys that need to develop into roles. Mac Jones, he still needs to develop. As good as he was, he needs to develop and get better. We need to find receivers. We need to find better linebackers. We need to find better cornerbacks. With our cap situation and our draft capital, we're not going to hit on all those this year. We're going to be able to get some of them, but we're not going to be able to hit on all of them. So this might still be a 2 or 3 year deal, and trading back and getting some future or some better picks and letting those guys develop is not the end of the world. So we've seen it too many times with Bill. I bet we see it again this year, and this is the one year that I'm probably not going to freak out too much about it.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said there. We got a good question here. So this answer is obvious to me. If you're talking about just one for one, looking at the receivers, who'd you rather have, Chris Olave or John Mechie? I'd rather have Chris Olave, but this is an interesting conversation talking about value. So would you rather have Chris Olave at 21 or John Mechie at the end of the second round for the Patriots? It's a tough one.
It's tough one. Because this will be super clear in about a week and a half when we know who we've signed and what positions are need. If we don't have a cornerback, then I think it's obviously John Mechie. And still, even if we do get a cornerback, I still think it's John Mechie because of his connection with Mac. But Chris Olave, I mean, he might go into his pro day and run close to a 4.2 or close to 4.3. He ran a 4.39. He might get like 4.32, 4.33 and improve on his 40. And I think he's the most polished receiver in the class. He's going to come in and he's going to make an immediate impact. He's the safest receiver. So it's tough. I love them both. I'd probably have to say Olave, but I'm fine with John Mechie too. I think that his value and his connection with Mac is great. The thing about Mechie and Olave, both of them, I think that you know what their ceiling is. Guys like a Garrett Wilson, Drake London, you don't know their ceiling. Both Olave and Mechie, super safe picks. They're going to come in. They're going to do a lot of great things in this offense. So that's what intrigues me about both of these guys.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. It's certainly tough. I don't think there's a better fit for this offense than Chris Olave. I think he's a perfect fit here. Like we've touched on many times, we both love to have Olave. I'd be hyped with either one of these guys, though. Great Patriots fits. John Mechie, for all the reasons you listed, his connection with Mac Jones, he can play all the different positions on the field. He can play outside. He can play Z, slot. He can play anywhere at the wide receiver position and run a bunch of different he can run the whole route tree pretty much, just like Chris Olave. Chris Olave is better route runner, super polished, like you said, great floor. And I think maybe he doesn't have as high of a ceiling as some of these other guys, but sometimes high ceiling means really low floor, and that means boom or bust. And I think that's what you can see from some of these prospects. And the Patriots, I don't want to see them take a boom or bust prospect. We already had bust for N'Keal Harry. We already had him be a bust. So I'm okay with them taking a safe, guaranteed prospect, a guy who's going to contribute year one, and that's Chris Olave. He will be an instant contributor to this team if we get him. I don't think it's likely, but I'd also be perfectly fine. I think Olave is going to be out. Okay, if we pass on Olave at 21, I'm going to be upset, and I'm gonna admit that now because I will, because I love Chris Olave. He's my draft crush. But if Olave's gone, or if we get a great trade offer for pick 21 and we trade back and we end up getting John Mechie and one of the linebackers, Quay Walker, whoever, and then we get Travis Jones, defensive tackle, whoever. If we get some of those defensive players and they fill some roles, or if we get Akai or Elam late in the first round, early in the second, something like that, and then we end up getting Mechie with that, I'm going to be super happy with that as well. I'll understand that. But Chris Olave, it's hard for me not to say that because I'm such a big fan of his. We've raved about him a ton on this podcast, but I would have to go Olave as well.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of our combine winners. I'm seeing some come through. Thoughts on some linebackers. We talked about Olave a little, but let's start off. A lot of people seem to be amused by the wide receiver position. So let's start there. We have a video out online on the YouTube channel. So scroll down if you haven't watched that already. That outlines our 5 biggest ones that we thought won, which we'll hit on some of those here. We'll hit on a couple more too. But do you want to hit on Chris Olave, start off, maybe some of his numbers, what impressed you about his combine?
Yeah, I mean, obviously his original numbers were higher than his 40-yard dash time was higher originally than it ended up being officially. I think he ran a 4.26 unofficially, and that dropped down to 4.39, 32-inch vert. He's a good 32-inch vert, 10 feet, 11-inch broad jump, I think, 7-inch, 11-inch. Where'd it go? Oh boy, I'm all over the place. 10 foot 3-inch, none of the above. 10 foot 3-inch broad jump. So good athlete, really solid athlete, Chris Olave. I mean, 4.39 is still that's moving. You're moving pretty fast. And I just think with his route running ability and his speed, the combination of those two, perfect fit here for the Patriots. We just touched on him a little bit, so I'll let you maybe move on to one of the other guys. But Chris Olave, perfect fit for the Patriots. If he's there at 21. I don't know who would be upset with that pick for the Patriots. I think he'd fit in so well here.
Yeah, and this next guy, I mean, if you haven't heard of him now, you haven't watched the podcast enough, or you haven't been watching too much draft stuff, because Christian Watson out of North Dakota State lit up the combine. 4.36 40, 38.5-inch vertical, and 11.4 broad. That was the third fastest 40 for receivers, third highest vert for receivers, and the highest broad jump for receivers. And not to mention, he's 6'4", 208 pounds, 10 and an eighth inch hands and 32-inch arms. I mean, the dude's massive. Now, if you haven't heard of him, it's because he comes from the FCS level, North Dakota State. Doesn't scare me at all. Cooper Kupp came from the FCS level. Kendrick Bourne, FCS level. FCS receivers are fine in the NFL. Now, this guy, I mean, if you're talking New England who wants to go get a true outside receiver, you're looking at Christian Watson right here, 6'4", massive frame. He makes the jump ball catches. And you get a 6'4" receiver running faster than Chris Olave at a 4.36. He originally clocked in at a 4.28 unofficial. He was impressive, and he dominated the Senior Bowl. He was a late addition, dominated the Senior Bowl. I love this guy. I think he propelled himself into a second round pick, maybe an early third round pick. But this is a guy, like I mentioned, if you don't go get a receiver in the first round and you get this guy in the second, there's no need to worry because this guy is special. He's something special, and you saw that at the combine.
I agree. I mean, freaky athlete. I mean, being that tall, being able to run that fast, that's crazy. And obviously, people are going to say his school, that level of play is different, which it is. It is a big jump to the NFL, but anybody who's that athletic, when he was put in that mix of combine players with the rest of the guys, he stood out still. Like he still was like, oh, that guy's a little bit different. Like his size and speed, good hands, good deep threat, good X receiver. If you want to take a guy in the second round, like you said, that's a good option for them. Late in the second round, he's improved his draft stock tremendously since the beginning of this whole process started. So he continues to go up and up and up, and he's certainly a name to watch for. Very talented, very, very talented receiver. That I think would be a good Patriots fit. Just all the things you touched on: the size, the speed, the athleticism at that height is ridiculous. So another guy who I think is a good Patriots fit, we touched on in the video as well, Sky Moore from Western Michigan, 5'10", 195. He ran a 4.41, 34.5-inch vert, 10'4" broad jump. He's a guy who is more of an interior, kind of a slot player that now is looking at more of the second round. He can play outside as well. His route tree is pretty diverse for the most part. He's great in the slot though. He's that typical Patriot slot receiver, fill the Edelman role. That's kind of some of the comparisons that you've seen to a guy like him, and I think he'd fit in here very well. I know that that's not necessarily a role that we need right now. We have Jacoby Myers that plays slot currently. Kendrick Bourne plays more of the Z, but he can play slot as well. So most people want an X receiver. That's more of what we need. But if they're looking to add to the slot, some former Patriots coaches, I think it was Dante Scarnecchia, said Mac Jones needs a binky. He needs a third down option. He needs a slot receiver like they've had Edelman, Welker, Amendola. They need some of those options. So I think Sky Moore, if they're looking for a slot receiver in the first 2 or 3 rounds, I think he'd be a good option.
Yeah, and he's intriguing. He played quarterback in high school. He knows the position. He's a dude that I think can come in and, he's getting comparisons to Julian Edelman. That should intrigue a lot of Patriots fans. So I'm going to stay kind of on the bigger side of receivers. I'm going to go to George Pickens. A lot of people might, grimace when I say his name because he's been injury prone and he's had some issues off the field, but coming off an ACL injury, not playing very much this year for Georgia, except for in the national championship, had a great catch for 50 plus yards, but he measures at 6'3", 195, a little bit smaller hands, 8 3/4, but a 4.47 40, a 33-inch vert, and a 10.4 broad. The 4.4 40 is way higher than I thought he would, especially coming off an ACL injury and all the stuff he's been through. He intrigues me. If he would have played and not had injuries, he's probably a first-round talent. That's how good he was. He was incredible his freshman year at Georgia, and I know a lot of people are not going to like him. Maybe it's a big-bodied receiver. Maybe it's because he hasn't played a lot. But if this guy can figure out his health and be healthy in the NFL, he's a scary, freaky good athlete that I think could make a big impact for whatever team drafts him. And he's not going to be a super high pick because of those injuries. He's probably going to be a third, maybe a late second-round pick. So he's a guy that I think New England could look at drafting later in the draft if they don't go first round.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, just based on some of the things and I guess some of the concerns that people have with him. But any other receivers that you want to? I mean, we touched on a couple more in the video. Do you want to touch on more of those? Do you want to touch on some of these questions we have before we move on to other positions?
I just say the 2 other ones that I have on here that are a little bigger bodied that I thought ran well for their size. Jalen Tolbert, South Alabama, he's 6'1", he ran a 4.49, and then Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, he ran a 4.43. I thought those numbers were way higher than I thought they were going to be. I did not expect either of them to run under a 4.5. So those are guys that are going to be 3rd, 4th round guys, but they have a lot of talent too. They're playing at a little bit. They're not Power 5 schools, obviously South Alabama or Boise State, but they have tremendous talent too. That is someone that New England could target. So yeah. And they're both Senior Bowl guys. So We know how New England loves Senior Bowl players.
That always adds to it. All right, let's answer a few questions here before we keep going. Let's see. Linebacker is a bigger need than cornerback. We can't stop the run to save our life. They're both very desperate needs right now. I don't think I can put. I'd probably. This is a good question. I would probably put corner over linebacker just because of the NFL offenses right now. You're seeing more pass heavy offenses than ever, and if we go into the year with Jalen Mills as our number one corner, and we don't add to that, and we have Jawan Williams and Sean Wade and Miles Bryant, those are our corners. We're screwed. I mean, that there's no way around that. You're absolutely screwed with the passing offenses. And coming from the same guy, let McCourty go. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see a single reason why a Patriots fan would want Devin McCourty to go. He gets hated on way too much. He's one of the best corners in the corners. He's one of the best safeties in the league. Still, you never see his name called. He missed like one tackle that was big in a moment, and people want to say let him go. He was one of the most consistent players for us. He has been for the past decade. Devin McCourty is a great asset to this defense. He's the guy who sets everybody up for success in the back end, make sure everybody's aligned correctly, make sure everybody's doing everything right. That doesn't make sense to me. But linebacker, cornerback, what do you think is a bigger need for the Pats?
Cornerback for sure. Okay. I think that corner is what New England's built. They've always built from the secondary up, and it's good to have bigger linebackers, but I think it's got to be cornerback this year. You're losing arguably your best cornerback and a top 5 corner in the league, top 8 maybe, if New England fans want to argue that. But that's a big need, and I think corner is missing the depth of corner too. Is if we're losing J.C. Jackson, but we have better guys behind him, maybe it softens the blow. You can rotate him in, but there's not much depth I trust behind Jalen Mills and Jonathan Jones.
Also, there's a couple of young guys that are unproved. We haven't seen Cam McGrone at linebacker yet. We haven't really seen Ronnie Perkins at edge. So there's some guys in that linebacker edge group that we haven't seen yet. A couple guys. Who was it that got injured? That we re-signed linebacker this summer.
Raekwon McMillan.
Yes, yeah. Raekwon McMillan. People loved what they saw from him. Apparently, the Patriots thought he did really well. He got hurt. He's back for this next season. So we'll see. Obviously, we need to add to linebacker as well. I'm not saying we don't, because we do. But I just think cornerback is a bigger need. They have to get an elite wide receiver either in the market or trade if they trade back. I don't necessarily know that them trading back will have to do with getting a receiver in the trade market. I guess if they trade back for more assets and want to give a second, third round pick to somebody for a receiver, that's an option. But I don't think there's a lot of receivers out there that the Patriots are going to be looking to actually trade for. We talked about maybe Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. I don't think Lockett's more likely than Metcalf, but I don't think either of those are super likely. You got any thoughts on that one?
No, I think that there's no need to give up a ridiculous amount of trade for someone that you don't trust in. And I don't know if I trust in many receivers out there on the trade market or what the price value is that they're going to want them to go for. So,
yeah, I agree. I don't think we need to trade down, especially considering our needs tend to lie further back.
But he wants us to trade
up. Yeah, that doesn't see like we're already lacking draft picks. I think there's a 0% chance we trade up. And you want to trade up? Who are you going to trade up?
Yeah,
for?
That's the thing is we don't need to trade up for a quarterback. It's probably not worth it to trade up for a receiver. There's good receivers in this draft class, but I don't know if there's a clear like Jamar Chase in this draft class that you're going to go get.
The only thing that I could see, corner.
Yeah.
If Ahmad Gardner's falling, if Derek Stingley's falling, and you want to grab him, okay. But outside of that, I don't think I really don't think there's a single position outside of corner that I'd want to trade up for. There's some talented edge guys, but we have a million edge rushers that are just average right now.
Yeah.
I don't think trading up is going to be a good option. I think you trade back, acquire more assets, get a defensive tackle and a linebacker, get a corner and a linebacker, and fill 2 needs instead of 1. And you're getting a guy who's going to be a little worse, but with the potential to be just as good in a couple of years after some development. Because the middle of this draft, after pick 15 to 20, a lot of the guys in that 20 to 60 range are very similar talent wise. It's a very deep class. So let's see. Let's stick on how great is the potential of this receiver class compared to other years?
I don't think that the top end guys, now they can be Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Those guys can be great. Now, when you're talking about like the DK Metcalf class, where a lot of those guys got taken later in the draft, I think that that's what you're going to see with this class is the guys maybe in the second, third, fourth round can be the ballers. And there's some dudes in the second round. We've talked about the depth. I think that you're going to see a lot of good contributing wide receivers for the next couple of years come later in the draft class. And then you're going to get, the dudes that are taken in the first round that can contribute obviously right away. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the depth in this draft class is like the DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin draft. And it sucks to say because that's the year we took N'Keal Harry. So that's how I kind of look at this class. The depth of the receivers is crazy good potential.
Yeah, the top end isn't what it's. I mean, last year, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith. That's kind of ridiculous. The talent at receiver at the top end, but I agree. I think there's some good depth options. I still think there's going to be some good options. I think Olave is going to be a good wide receiver wherever he goes. I think, like you said, some of the boomer bust potential, like a guy like Drake London, could work out very well somewhere. He also might bust. You never know with guys like that. There's a lot of depth though. Some of the guys we just touched on that perform well: Christian Watson, Sky Moore, Pickens, Calvin Austin. There's some guys that have the potential to be solid receivers and actual contributors here in rounds 2 to 3. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. But the top end isn't. I wouldn't say the top end is the same as it was the last year or even in some recent years. Speaking of Drake London, I think that we could take Drake London. Jace, you wanna go with this?
Yeah, I don't think that he's a scheme fit for New England. If they're looking for a true X, I like him better than Treylon Burks, and I think that people are worried about him being comparable to N'Keal Harry. I think if he would have ran this week, you would have seen that he's faster, he jumps better, he's more explosive than N'Keal Harry. So I get your guys' concerns. I think that he's nowhere near N'Keal Harry, so I wouldn't mind it. But I think that if you're going to take a receiver in the first round, I'd take Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. If I'm having my pick of the litter, I'm taking one of those guys, probably even a Jahan Dotson over Drake London, because I've seen those receivers have more success in New England than a big-bodied receiver like Drake London. But with that being said, New England wants one of those guys, and they're going to have to take a chance on one of them. They can't just keep drafting small receivers. So if they are going to take a big-bodied receiver, I would like it to be Drake London over Treylon Burks.
Yeah, I just want to stay as far away from him as possible. And I'm not saying he can't be a very elite receiver somewhere else. He has that potential to be extremely, extremely good in the NFL. He really does. But I don't want to go anywhere near that guy if I'm the Patriots. I'm scarred for life with N'Keal Harry. I don't want anybody even similar to him. I know he's faster. I know he's bigger. I know his jump ball ability is even better. I just don't think a guy like that fits in this offense very well. The Patriots haven't had success integrating these guys. I think, like you said, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, even much more refined route runners. These guys are going to be better prepared to be in the Patriot system and better set up for success long term. So Drake London isn't a guy I'm excited about for the Patriots. I think for another team, yeah, I think he's an intriguing prospect for sure for offenses that like to throw those 50-50 balls. I think he's going to be a great red zone target. And you get anybody with that size and we don't know his actual 40-time speed yet, obviously, but anybody with that size and ability to move a little bit down the field and that contested catch ability he has, it has the potential to be really good in the NFL. So sure. That's one. You want to touch on any free agency we've re-signed or let go predictions?
We kind of had this in our last live. If you want to go watch that, and Cole did a good job marking it, tagging it up, so you can go see each player that we thought would re-sign or we'd let go. But it probably changed a little bit as of some of the needs. Nah, probably not too bad.
Well, I think we both said JC wasn't going to resign, right?
I thought we tagged him. Did we franchise tag JC?
Oh, maybe we did. Wow, this is bad. This was last week, guys, and we're already forgetting. This is bad.
So maybe we need to go rewatch it too.
I was hoping we were going to resign. I was hoping we were going to tag or resign JC. That was in my offseason plan. My thoughts on this the whole time has been he's gone. That's just been my thoughts especially after we heard that Patriots were likely not to tag him. He's gone. That's my assumption. I still think that. So JC gone. I to some parts of it up quickly. We have some veteran players leaving. McCourty hopefully staying. A couple trades in there. So if you want the full breakdown, we have all the chapters lined up throughout the whole podcast. So you don't have to watch the entire thing. If you don't feel like it, you can skip through the parts you want to watch. So go check that out if you want our full free agency predictions and what we do, our thoughts on those. So you want to touch on this last one, and then we'll keep going with the.
Yeah, DJ Chark's someone that we've talked about before, and I like him. I think that he could be a cheap option. Now he's had injury problems, and he has been playing in Jacksonville. So he can come in. I think he's a boomer bust type of player, but you're not going to have to give him too much money off of what he's been doing the last couple of years. But he's shown flashes of being a downfield 50-50 guy. I think that I would like to see him come in, but it's not that wide receiver one that New England fans want. It's just going to be another depth piece.
Yeah, and like we said, some of the money that he's projected to get, according to some sources on Twitter and stuff, I think it's going to be out of the price range for the Patriots for the type of receiver he is. I don't think it's going to be a great fit. You never know. Maybe they'll overpay for a guy like that, just like they overpaid for Nelson Aguilar, but hopefully not. Hopefully they use those resources wisely. But let's continue on with the Senior Bowl prospects. Obviously, we don't really have any quarterbacks. We're not going to touch on that necessarily.
I thought we were supposed to trade Mac, though.
That's what I heard. Oh my God, I hate seeing that stuff. There was NBC Sports Boston posted today. Should the Patriots have been involved in the Russell Wilson trade? Like, what are we doing, guys? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I understand it's segments. They need to talk about this stuff to get clicks and stuff. But it's like, wow, really? I mean, we just got Mac Jones. He had a phenomenal year. Almost won Rookie of the Year if Jamar Chase wasn't an absolute freak of nature. He was great, and there's no reason to not have hope in Mac Jones. It's just people wanting to. We're not even going to touch on that. That's the last of it. All right. You wanna touch on linebackers, defensive line, corner? What do you want to touch on first?
Yeah, let's go to linebackers.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll kind of end with maybe the secondary because that's what we see as the biggest need. But the biggest winner for me this week, and I think I mentioned this guy to you probably 2 or 3 months ago when we started talking about the draft process, and I posted a couple things on my story before he tested. But that's Troy Anderson out of Montana State, and he just killed the combine. 4.42 40, 36-inch vertical, 10.8 broad. He measured in at 6'3", 242. I think that this is a dude that probably shot himself into the second round, and that sucks because originally I had us taking him in the third, maybe fourth round because of him coming out of Montana State. But he played quarterback his first year at Montana State, then running back. This is his first year playing defense for them. He won the Defensive Player of the Year for the whole FCS, led Montana State to the national championship where they lost to North Dakota State. But the dude's an animal. You want to get bigger, stronger, physical in the run game and in the pass game. Troy Anderson's, I think he might be outside. I love Devin Lloyd, but I think the value Troy Anderson would give in the second round or a third, if that somehow happened, that might be my draft crush too, outside of Chris Olave. I think that he provides tremendous value. And you look at Darius Leonard, and coming from a smaller school, I really do, and I don't want to compare him to, but I think that Troy Anderson and Darius Leonard can have some crazy good comparisons.
Yeah, I mean, Anderson killed the combine. He definitely was. I mean, that type of speed, 6'3", 242. That's impressive. This whole class, this whole draft class, there's so many guys that are just crazy athletes for their size. So I thought he did well. I want to touch on Devin Lloyd right after this right here, but just to answer this comment real quick. Will you do a mock draft simulator in future videos as the draft comes closer? Yes, absolutely. We probably, next week we'll probably do free agency reactions and stuff throughout the whole week. But I mean, right after the week of free agency, we're going to be doing mock drafts, full first round mock drafts, maybe even 2-round mock drafts. We're going to be doing Patriots 7-round mock drafts. Yeah. After free agency, we're going to be digging in. We'll probably have 400 different mock drafts that we'll do before the draft actually starts. And then on draft night, we're going to have a draft show. We're going to go live throughout the draft, that round 1, maybe rounds 2 and 3. We'll either go live again, or we will just have some videos right after reacting to picks, go live.
Well, if New England trades out of their first round, we probably have to go live for the second round.
That was one thing that I was actually going to talk to you about tonight is it seems like they're going to trade out. What are we going to do? So,
yeah.
But yeah, so tune into all that stuff. We did a first round mock draft a few weeks ago, probably 3-4 weeks ago at this point now, but things have changed a lot. Now the draft order is going to be changed with the Seahawks. So we're definitely going to be doing a lot of mock drafts coming up. So stay tuned for all that stuff. But Devin Lloyd, before the combine, it was looking like he was going to be moving up to a top 15, top 10 pick. I think that might have changed. I think there was a pretty unanimous thought that Devin Lloyd was taking himself out of the Patriots conversation and there was no chance he's going to be available. I think he might. He ran a 4.66. He seems to play a lot faster than that. Maybe he just had a bad time, but 4.66 for Devin Lloyd is not anywhere near what I expected. And I think this might drop his stock. I don't know how much. I don't think it's like second round or anything crazy like that, but I think he was projected. People were making comparisons to him and Micah Parsons. They're on two different stratospheres for athletes. I mean, Micah Parsons ran like a 4.3, mid 4.3s, something like that. Devin Lloyd 4.66. That's two completely different players. He is not Micah Parsons. Maybe somebody's going to fall in love with the play speed and say, oh, he can be somebody half Micah Parsons, whatever. I don't know what they'll compare him to, but he's definitely not Micah Parsons. I think his draft stock dropped for sure. Micah Parsons went like 11th overall this past year, I think, something like that. I don't think Devin Lloyd is going to go in the top 15 anymore. Maybe somebody still takes a shot on him, but that speed is a little bit concerning for a guy that's supposed to be playing so fast and sideline to sideline, all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think Devin Lloyd's stock took a hit. I think people know he plays faster than what he runs. And I think that honestly, Nakobe Dean not testing is what's going to get. They don't know. All they know about Nakobe Dean is that he's undersized. He's 5'11", 230 pounds. And I think that that's going to still keep Devin Lloyd as the number one linebacker off the board. And I don't know if that's a top 15 pick. Maybe it's to one of the Eagles picks in 16, 17, or the 19th pick. But I don't know. I think that he's still the first linebacker off the board. I think that his draft stock did take a hit. I just don't think it's massive because Nakobe Dean didn't really show anything either. He was even smaller than I thought. I didn't think he'd be 5'11". Like that's concerningly small for a linebacker. And I know he does not play that small and he's physical and fast, but there's concerns there. Bill doesn't draft those type of linebackers, and I don't know many other teams that do. So I don't know if he hurt his stock, and I don't know if any of the other guys can catch him. But the numbers were definitely not what I expected. But I know he plays faster than a 4.66.
Yeah, and a guy like that, a guy like Nakobe Dean, which we talked about off air a little bit. If you're looking for a Nakobe Dean, you can just draft Christian Harris in probably the second round. Not this. I mean, he's not as good as Nakobe Dean. I'm not saying that, but they're same type of player, undersized. Both of them are pretty much smaller than Kyle Duggar at the linebacker position, and Duggar plays safety, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't think those prospects are going to be on the Patriots' radar anymore. I think it's more going to be guys like Troy Anderson, Quay Walker. Is it Chad Muma or Mumma? How do you pronounce his last name? Muma. Chad Muma. He's a guy we've talked about a bunch as well that we both like. He had a pretty solid combine, 4.63 speed. Not too bad for his size and ability that he has. I still think he's a good prospect in the second round for the Patriots, but there's a lot of options at linebacker that are better scheme fits than guys like Christian Harris and Nakobe Dean. Devin Lloyd is interesting. I don't know. I feel like I know his play speed seems faster than that, but the 40-yard dash times do matter a little bit, and that doesn't lie. You know what I mean? Your 40 times your 40 time. Obviously, people have bad days, people have good days, but I think that was a little concerning. I expected him to run a lot faster than he ran. I know he's still big, but he plays fast. It looks like on tape, and I don't know. I expected a little bit more.
Yeah, and Darius Leonard ran a 4.7 40, and no, I don't know if people are going to say he's slow. So I get 40s are your 40s, and it tells you certain things, but I'm not worried about his game speed. I'm worried about his testing speed, and I mean, if we're just going to draft people off of testing, that kind of sucks because I think Devin Lloyd's a true baller.
No, I know.
No, I'm not saying anything. I think that his numbers were underwhelming, 100%. But when you hear Darius Leonard ran a 4.7, I think that kind of shocks a lot of people because of how fast he plays the game and how instinctive he is to get in the holes, read the ball, read where the ball's going, and make plays. But the other guy for me, he's out of Wisconsin, Leo Chenal. I think that he's a very good scheme fit too. He's one of the heavier linebackers in the draft, 6'3", 250. He ran a 4.53. He had a 40.5-inch vertical and a 10.7 broad. Thought this guy tested very well for his size. I mean, he's exactly what you think of when you think of a Wisconsin linebacker, a big white linebacker that's going to be a thumper, but he can run and he can cover. I think that this is a good scheme fit. I'd probably rather have Troy Anderson over him because of his a little bit better speed, maybe a little bit lighter, and he's a little more versatile. But Leo Chenal is a guy that I have my eye on out of Wisconsin.
Sounds like a Patriots linebacker to me.
Nothing
Another guy. What do you think about Georgia linebacker Quay Walker? Second round guy. His 40-yard dash time was 4.52 at 241 pounds. He's 6'4", 33-inch arms. I mean, guy who can cover, play in space pretty well. He seems like a good Patriots fit too at that size. If you're looking for a combination of size and speed, I think Quay Walker is certainly an intriguing prospect for the Patriots as well. There's a lot of different options in this draft, but what do you think about a guy like Quay Walker?
Yeah, I like Quay Walker. The one other Georgia linebacker I like, Channing Tindall. He was 6'2", 230. He had 10 and 5/8-inch hands, massive hands, almost a 33-inch wingspan. He ran a 4.47, 42-inch vertical, and a 10.9 broad. He was more of the guy that played second fiddle to Nakobe Dean. And when you look at some of his stats this year, 67 total tackles, 35 of them solos, 5.5 sacks, a forced fumble. I think this is a guy that maybe is a little bit better blitzer than maybe a Quay Walker is. And he's going to be a second round guy. A Quay is going to be maybe later, a third or a fourth round. So maybe his value is a little bit better. But I did think both the Georgia linebackers outside of Nakobe Dean, honestly, every Georgia defender tested incredible.
I mean, just freaks. That defense is ridiculous.
But the two linebackers were definitely very, very impressive. And I'd like either one of them.
Yeah, I agree. You want to move on to?
No, yeah, let's move on to. At first, I thought the interior defensive line, but I think that there's too many needs now. Maybe we can just touch on some of those. Obviously,
that's
Jordan
kind of
Davis
odd.
was a freak.
That's weird that all of a sudden, you don't want to talk about Jordan Davis anymore. What happened? Well, you hated on Jordan Davis. You didn't want to see him till round 8. You think he's just an undrafted free agent. Jordan Davis is a freak. That guy's a freak. Obviously, I'm just kidding. You didn't hate on that much, but he was impressive. I at least want to touch on him and Travis Jones a little bit because I do think there are more needs, but I mean, the size and speed. Have you ever seen a guy that big run that fast? No. That was ridiculous.
Well,
he was moving. All right, you're 6'6", 341 pounds.
I'm close. Give or take a couple inches in pounds.
In pounds, yeah. No, but yeah, he was an absolute freak. I think he's out of the Patriots range at this point. If he falls to 21, I don't care what other needs are. Take him. I don't care. This dude is going to be a generational prospect. I think. I don't know. I've always been higher on him than you. This just kind of was the cherry on top for me. His testing was just freakish. I mean, absolutely freakish.
I've just liked the value at the defensive line position better, if that's where we go. Perion Winfrey was 6'4", 290. He ran a 4.89. Travis Jones, 6'4", 325, ran a 4.92. And then the other Georgia defensive tackle, like we talked about, any Georgia guy, Devontae Wyatt, 6'3", 304, ran a 4.77, and had a 29-inch vert. And so I think any of those three guys, I just like their value a little bit better. But I don't disagree with you at all. Jordan Davis he's freaky. He's a freaky athlete.
He's 3 inches taller than Devontae Wyatt, 40 pounds heavier, and ran basically the same exact 40 time, and had a couple inches on the vert over him. 3.5 inches on the vert over him, and a foot on the broad jump over. I mean, the dude is a freak, absolute freak. Whoever gets him is getting a good player. Travis Jones had a great combine as well. His testing numbers are pretty good. He ran a 4.92 40-yard dash at 325, 6'4". He's a freak too. So the value for Travis Jones in round 2, I think I've seen him even bump into the back end of round 1 in some people's mocks. I think he's probably early day 2 pick. He's gonna be a second rounder for sure, probably early at this point. So if the Patriots trade back, maybe they get a corner in free agency and they want a defensive tackle, Travis Jones is a great option. I think linebacker and corner are bigger needs right now, obviously, but Jordan Davis and Travis Jones, even Devontae Wyatt, maybe a little bit later, both all really intriguing prospects. And I think the defensive line group had a really solid day as well.
Yeah. And the other, position that I think is very deep that had a good day is the edge. And I don't know how many people want New England to take one. I don't know if you can have enough edge rushers. And I think outside of Matt Judon, I don't know if we have a true consistent pass rusher. So, you look at, I keep bringing up Georgia guys, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia, 6'5", 272, ran a 4.51. 35.5-inch vert, 10.2 broad. Boye Mafe, Minnesota, 6'4", 261, ran a 4.53. Jermaine Johnson, who we talked about, had a great Senior Bowl, 4.58. And then Nick Petonio out of Oklahoma. He might be a guy that's there maybe in the second. I think that both D-line and edge is something that New England will try to draft later in the draft, and it won't be one of these guys, but these dudes are freaky good athletes, and in any other circumstance, I'd love New England because these are both positions that you're rotating quite often and you can never have enough guys at.
Yeah, I just personally, I'd rather take a guy. This is a pretty solid edge group class as far as depth for the most part. Unless a very top end edge rusher falls to a place you don't want it to, I don't think they should take one with their first pick. I think they should trade back probably. I think there's bigger needs, Olave, and then corners. I don't think a linebacker that we are gonna need. I think there's better value in the second round, like we talked about. There's more prospects that we've talked about probably as people we love in the second round than the first round, just because of there's great value there. So yeah, edge is certainly something to keep an eye on, because especially Van Noy, I know he's outside linebacker edge. He's plays both. It's kind of the same position basically, but there's some depth there. Maybe you take a guy in the second, third round and trade back. I don't think unless one of those top guys falls to a spot you don't like, maybe not worth taking with the first pick. We may feel different on that, but I do agree that it's more of a need than people maybe think, just because you got Matt Judon and then who you got on the other side? Chase Winovich, Josh Uche, Ronnie Perkins. Ronnie Perkins we haven't seen any of. Uche and Winovich don't play very often. Bill Belichick's seen them for 3 full years for Winovich, right? And clearly doesn't have enough confidence in them to keep them on the field consistently. So it's a need, but I don't think it's a pressing need as pressing as corner, linebacker, and I'd even rather take one of the top receivers if we have Olave available on the board there.
Yeah, well, let's answer this question. We don't need a quarterback, but we can answer it, and then we'll get into our corners. But how many quarterbacks do you see going in the first round? It will help us if they start going, but I don't know. I think that maybe you get 2 before us and maybe 2 after for 4 in the first round, but I don't think it's going to be a bloodbath to get quarterbacks, kind of like it's been in previous years.
I'd say 3 to 4 total in the first round. I just don't see a lot, honestly. I mean, I think Malik Willis has intriguing properties, intriguing attributes about him. I do. I think the biggest thing, a team might fall in love with his athletic ability, his arm. He's not the best guy at processing the game at an NFL level, reading defenses, throwing over the middle of the field. He just, I don't know. I'm not high on any of these quarterbacks. I think some of them have potential. Some of them have talent, but I don't think there's a lot of guys that are going to be worth taking in the top 16 picks, top 20 picks even. You could see 2 guys go. I'm sure people are going to reach on quarterbacks. It's what happens. People need quarterbacks. They throw a dart at the dartboard and see what happens. I'm not high on any of these guys. Kenny Pickett, his hand size concerns me. If he plays in the rain, his little midget hands are gonna melt. No, they're not that small, but there's not a lot of guys I'm high on. Matt Corral concerns me with the RPO heavy system that he played, kind of a one read guy. He didn't go through a lot of real progressions. Maybe he can do it. Maybe that was just the offense they put him in, but we didn't see a lot of it. Desmond Ridder, great athlete. He performed well at the combine. I don't think there's a lot of guys. I think 3 to 4 maybe. And what kind of stinks about that is usually in a stacked draft class, like last year, 5 quarterbacks were taken in the top 15. So that means 5 more prospects on the defensive, offensive side of the ball got pushed further down the board for guys picking at pick 20, 21. So this year, we're not going to have that luxury. And there's not going to be as many talented players. We're usually in a draft class with 5 to 6 guys off in the first 20. You may get a guy like Andrew Booth, if he wasn't already going to be there, Jordan Davis, maybe one of those guys would be there that you wouldn't think would be there. Chris Olave, Ahmad Gardner, maybe he somehow falls in a draft stack with quarterbacks. So it's kind of unfortunate this year that the class isn't that great, but maybe those quarterbacks get taken later in the first and early in the second, and it pushes some of those second round talents back to you at your second pick.
Yeah, and that's why trading down, if people are trying to trade up for quarterbacks, people will pay top dollar for quarterbacks. If there's one on the board and someone wants him at 21, you might be able to get a haul. What?
We saw it
Oh,
today,
yeah,
Russell Wilson.
yeah.
I mean,
And you've seen in the draft before. I mean, Chicago trading up last year, and the Niners, and
Niners,
we're not in a top 10 pick, but still, some teams might want, especially if there's only been one taken by 21, and maybe Detroit at 32 just really wants to get up and get one. They feel, hey, like Kenny Pickett or someone's not going to be there at 32, or it's Ritter or someone. They might look to trade up, and that would be perfect to get an extra, or the last pick in the first round, and maybe a third or a fourth.
didn't the Packers trade up for Jordan Love?
They did.
I don't think it was many picks, and I don't know what the deal was, but even a package like that, which actually is a good transition into our next thing of prospects at the combine that we liked. If, like you said, Detroit wants to trade up and get a quarterback, okay, then we get the 32nd pick. Then we take a guy like Kaiir Elam if he's available. A guy that I like, a good press man corner. He's expected to go that late first round, early second round range. I don't know necessarily that he'll fall into the second round, but some people have him projected there. So I think if you're trading back into the late first or early second, I think he's a great guy to take a shot on. Plays, like I said, press man. He's a good man coverage corner, so a guy that's going to fit the Patriots system well if they continue to play man. So I thought he had a good day. I thought he had a good combine. He ran a 4.39. The speed is there. That was a question maybe of, can he keep up with some of these guys? And he ran the same 40-yard dash as Chris Olave. So he certainly got some speed to him. 6'1.5", 191. His vert was, did he not do the vert? I guess he didn't do the vert.
Nope.
But yeah, good speed, solid size, press man corner. Seems like a Patriots fit to me.
Yeah, maybe the best press man corner. He had great tape against Jamison Williams playing in the SEC competition. I mean, he went up against Treylon Burks. He went up against multiple guys before. I mean, think about the Alabama receivers that came through the last 2 years. He was going up against them. So love his size, 6'1.5". Like you mentioned, the speed thing, 4.39. I think this is a no-brainer. I'd probably like him at 21 too. I think that might be a little bit of a reach, but with our cornerback position, if you just can't find a trade down and there's no one else there,
I wouldn't mind it either.
I wouldn't mind it. But that's kind of there. I'll hit on this guy. I don't think he's going to be there. Some people are regarding him as the cornerback one of the class. But Ahmad Gardner, 6'3", 190, 4.41. I think that this dude just killed the combine. Maybe he is the cornerback one. I still think Stingley, because he's coming out of the SEC too, and what we've seen with him. But I think that Ahmad Gardner is a special talent, and he's got the length, he's got the size, he can play both man and zone. He's going to be special for a long time in this league.
Yeah, and one guy that wasn't at the combine, I think he's going his pro day. He was recovering from an injury. Andrew Booth Jr., another guy, good man coverage corner. He's super talented, a guy that I'd be more than willing to take at 21. Him, if Ahmad Gardner somehow falls, obviously him or Stingley, but I don't think that happens. Andrew Booth and Kaiir Elam are the only two guys at 21 that I'd probably be okay taking. Like you said, Kaiir Elam, I'd rather trade back a little bit if you can, but if you have no trade package and you like him, you like the ability, I'm okay with that. So I think both those guys would be great. Both fit Patriots scheme-wise. Obviously, if you can avoid taking a corner in the second round for the Patriots, that'd be good because that hasn't always worked out. So maybe you take him purposely in the first round so he works out for the Patriots instead of another second-round bust. But both those guys I absolutely loved. And then there was another guy, Tariq Woolen, who ran a 4.26 at 6'4".
Yep.
He was flying. He's a later round prospect. That 42-inch vert. That's an athlete right there. He's a raw prospect, but if you can kind of refine some of his tools, he's certainly a guy that the Patriots could take a shot on. And if that works out, his combination of speed and size and just agility, athleticism in general, certainly an intriguing prospect for the Patriots in probably round 3. I think he's projected right now.
Yeah, I think I've seen him even round 2. And
yeah, he's certainly after
I think you look at his size and his athleticism. I mean, 4.26, 40-inch vert, or 42-inch vert. This dude has it athletically. He might be the best athlete in the class. I mean, and like you mentioned, raw
Jordan
prospect, people, no. Tariq Woolen.
No way. At that size, running that fast.
Dude, he'd probably run a 4.4 at 341.
Who?
Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, okay. He'll run a 5.6 at 340.
Yeah, whatever.
Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. I think that he's a guy that people will want to draft because off of his potential. I think that his potential's there, and I don't know if there's a worse place to be taken by New England as a second-round corner, maybe a first-round receiver, because we have not hit on second-round corners in the past, but I think that he has all the tools athletically, athleticism-wise, to develop into something special. The other one I liked, FCS guy, killed the combine too, Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State. Bigger corner, 6'2". He had a 4.3 340. He had an 11-inch broad and a 39.5-inch vert. He also one of the few guys that tested in both the shuttle and the 3-cone, and he had very impressive numbers. He had a 6.48 3-cone drill and then a 3.94 shuttle. Like quick acceleration side to side and long distance speed. He's a guy that probably will be a second or a third round guy, and I think that he's one of the few late round corners that I would like to take a chance on and let Bill develop him.
Yeah, both those guys. I mean, we'll see what rounds they make it to after the good combines, but both those two guys, those are two corners that I'd be okay taking shots on later in the draft. And outside of that, there's not a ton of guys that intrigue me a lot. I know we've talked about a couple of different guys, Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, Josh Jobe, stuff like that. But I think the corners we touched on for round one, or maybe a trade back scenario with Kaiir Elam, and then these two guys in rounds maybe 2, 3, 4, depending on where they go, probably both kind of around 2, 3 range. But I think those are all intriguing prospects of the Patriots. A lot of the later guys are more raw talent players that definitely need some work. That's why they're going later in the draft. But certainly some intriguing prospects of the Patriots to keep their eye on, and a lot of guys I think that they could refine and turn into players in the NFL.
Yeah, Josh Jobe's a guy that jumps off the page for me. Obviously, Alabama. Bill loves the draft from Nick Saban. Huge wingspan, almost 33-inch arms. He's 32 and 5/8. He's plays press man at Alabama, and I think he'd be a good guy. He's fallen later and later every time I look, maybe a 4th-round guy. I've seen Mario Goodrich out of Clemson that's been good. There's Darion Kendrick out of Georgia, and none of these guys really tested, so maybe we'll see more at their pro day. The one guy I do kind of want to touch on that I still like, it kind of falls in the Roger McCreary category, but Trent McDuffie, a great cornerback, but he comes in sub 30 arms. He has 29 and 3/4-inch arms. And I think both him and McCreary are special talents, but it's very, very scary to see corners with that length at arms. You can't really play press man. Both of them maybe are going to be better zone corners. And like you mentioned, if you take one of them, maybe you transition into a zone corner team a little bit more than you are man. But they're guys that I think could be there, maybe falling late first round if you do trade back and you take one, or early second.
Yeah, I like you said, if McDuffie falls in that range, and then you like him as a zone coverage guy, if you want to change your system a little bit and keep playing more zone, I think he's a good option. Obviously, you said arm length is an issue. Maybe not as much of an issue for a zone coverage corner as a guy who's playing like press man or something, because you can't really get your arms up in there and jam them and stuff. But both interesting prospects. We both liked McCreary more before we found out he had dinosaur arms. That's a problem. And maybe he falls to mid round 2, early round 3, and the Patriots take a shot on him. I don't love it. It seems risky, wasting a pick on a guy if you're really have those concerns about stuff like that. But let's see. Watch us draft a high round cornerback who becomes a bust. When we get a low undrafted cornerback, they somehow have a better chance of succeeding. Cyrus Jones, Jonathan Jones, Duke Dawson, J.C. Jackson. That's not wrong. You're certainly not wrong. That'll probably be the same scenario. We'll draft Kaiir Elam this year. He'll be horrible, and then we'll get an undrafted guy off the street who used to play wide receiver or something, and he'll end up being the best cornerback in the NFL in 3 years. So that's usually how it works with the Patriots. But question here from Light Shadows. If the Pats spent so much money on free agency last year, why wouldn't they have used some of that money to extend some of our existing players like J.C. Jackson, etc.?
Well, they offered him a contract extension mid-season. Now, Did you hear what the number was? I don't know if that came out. It obviously wasn't enough. I don't know what it was, how close it was, maybe $14-15 million a year, and he obviously
said
declined
it wasn't insulting. He said it wasn't an insulting offer. So I think it was a real offer from the Patriots.
But he just didn't take it. So I think that New England had plans to extend him, and they wanted to, and they threw him what they thought was a fair offer, and he said no. He's going to test the market, and we're going to see what he gets. So I think that they wanted to. They had the money to, that's for sure. And once JC said no, maybe they're kind of like, okay, well, if he wants the money, we're going to have to move on. So that's the reports I'm hearing. I'd be interested to know what the offer is. I think if he's saying it's not insulting, I'm hoping it's 15, 16 million. I mean, if it were to be 12 or 11, he'd probably, but if you get 15, 16 and he's projected 17, 18 million, but he wants the 20, try to get the 20, $21 million, that makes sense. So that's what would be my guess is what they offered him, probably around 15, 16 a year.
Yeah, I understand. And also you don't know how guys are going to mesh together. Like the defense this past season, now you know how these guys mesh. You get another year of JC in the system. You don't want to extend JC after him having 1 year, not even a full year without without Stephon Gilmore. So this year he had a full season without Stephon Gilmore. He performed pretty well. I mean, he's still a top corner in the NFL. I don't know. I have a hard time putting him in that discussion of top 3. Maybe you could argue he's top 5. I think he's in that 5 to 8 range probably. I hear they offer JC Jackson $17.2 million. I haven't heard any specific numbers of what they've offered him. If they offered him 17.2, that seems very fair to me. Like that seems like a very fair offer for JC Jackson services. But he wants 20. He wants to be the highest paid corner.
A lot of it comes down to like 17.2 might be fair, but what was guaranteed? How many years? Like he seems to want a 4-year, maybe fully guaranteed contract, and not fully guaranteed because most of the time you see that with quarterbacks or crazy ass positions like that. But maybe you're looking at more than 50, 60, 70% of his contract guaranteed, and maybe New England didn't want to offer him that. And so that could be another thing too, is the 17.2 was very fair, but maybe that's a 2-year $17.2 million deal, and only 5 million guaranteed. All the contract stuff is interesting to know what it was and what it obviously wasn't, like you mentioned, insulting, but there's obviously something he didn't like about it, whether that's the year, whether it's the total number, whether it's guaranteed, whatever it was.
Also, Taysom Hill. Let me see if I can find his contract. Taysom Hill, boy, signed a 4-year, $40 million contract. Well, he signed was that the crazy contract he signed? That it was just full of like fake money and.
It depended on what position he played. Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can maneuver contracts very creatively to look like, oh, this contract's the best thing ever. He's going to get paid $200 million. And then actually it's like, oh, actually he's probably only going to get $60 million over this, you know what I mean? So you can do heavy incentive contract, whatever. So you never know what the offer was. If he was getting offered 4 to 5 years for $17 to $18 million, I wish he would have taken that with the Patriots. I think that's a more than fair offer. I think that's a perfect range of JC Jackson, where he is right now, and maybe he's betting on a team betting on him for him improving in this area because he's about to be entering his prime. This is going to be the prime of his career. This is his big contract. I don't blame him for wanting a lot of money. I just wish he didn't want so much, and the Patriots would be more in the range of what he's looking for, but it looks like that's not going to be the case.
For sure. Well, Cole, do you have anything else before we hop off? It goes so fast now.
Yeah, gee, I mean, this is back-to-back 2-hour podcast, the longest ones we ever had. This is no, but I think that's a good one. Yep. I don't really have anything else. We touched on draft prospects, all the news. One other thing, Harold Landry signed an extension with the Titans. I don't think he was a player of the Patriots. We already spent big money on Judon, but he's a very talented player. Another guy in the AFC that re-signed with their team. All right, we'll touch on this real quick.
Yep.
What do you think of this plan? Sign Tre'Davious Ward and draft a cornerback.
Yeah, I'd love it. I think that you can put whether it's Ward and Mills, one of them's your cornerback 1, or they just kind of are the tandem, Jonathan Jones in the slot, and you're developing a young corner. I don't know if I'd want to go a first-round corner in this situation. I'd love to trade back if you get this and maybe Elam. Take one early second. Yeah, like if you could get an Elam early second, or something like that. That would be perfect. So I think that's a great scenario right there, and it fits what New England needs, and you can still address linebacker in the free agency or the draft too, and you don't have to double dip at corner. So yeah, I love that.
I love that plan as well. Ward would be getting, like we said, maybe $10 million annually. If you draft Elam early second round, and then you have another second round pick, maybe even 2 second round picks, depending on what you get value wise. or you have a third in that trade back scenario. I would love it. You get Javarius Ward, Kyer Elam, Jalen Mills, and then you have Sean Wade, Miles Bryant, Jawan Williams. That's not bad. That's a lot better looking than it is right now. Right now it looks very scary. So I would like that a lot. I think that's good, a good option. And then maybe draft a linebacker in either round 2 or 3. Maybe draft Mechie in round 2, Sky Moore, one of those guys, and that type of plan would be perfect in my eyes. You address linebacker, you address corner, and you draft a receiver. I think that would be perfect. And then maybe take another receiver late if you don't address it in free agency or something like that. But if they still have plenty of ways to create a lot of cap space. So if they do some of the things that are in our previous video, which if you want to see that, you can go check that out. I think it was top 5 ways that Patriots can create cap space. There's a bunch of really good ways to create cap space, to sign a corner like that, maybe not draft a receiver, maybe sign a receiver in free agency, maybe an Allen Robinson if he is available for the right number. Bunch of different great options for the Patriots here. I am a little concerned about the corner position, but if they can come away with a plan like this and get Ward and get a guy like Kyer Elam late in the first or early second, I'd be more than happy with that.
For sure. Last thing, any running backs that interest you by the well? I think that any running backs that interest you by the way or something is what I think it's trying to say. But
okay.
If we're going for agency, I heard something about Leonard Fournette, but I think I think that I don't like that. I'd rather just re-sign James White cheap, use him as a third down back, and if not, maybe find a third down scat back in the draft. But I think that James White's a guy that you can find for cheap. And no, you're good, Brian. find for cheap and be able to keep him here.
I think James White for sure is the best option there. And there's a couple guys in the draft. I'm going to have to look more into these running backs because I do think a third down. My grammar is horrible as well. So it's not just you. I can't speak either. A third down pass catching running back, I think is an option later in the draft that they might look at because James White obviously just signed a 1-year deal last year. Brandon Bolden and him are both up for contracts again. They're probably going to only re-sign one of them, if either of them. So I think that's something they'll look for in this upcoming draft, maybe potentially in the later rounds, because Damian Harris is going to be up for a contract. You got him and Ramondre right now as your kind of power backs. Ramondre can do things out of the pass catching role as well. He's still talented in that aspect, but I think a true third down back like James White, that kind of mold, I think if a guy can develop behind James White for a year, I think that would help him tremendously. So I would like to re-sign James White, and then we'll maybe get more into the running backs as we look at the tape a little more.
For sure. Well, here it is. Light Shadow, guys. You're welcome. We appreciate you guys. The support has been crazy. The JC Jackson video we just put out on his news, it was like 800 views in 12 hours. And all the other videos we've been posting, the live pods have been doing great. So we appreciate it. Yes, make sure you guys smash the like button, subscribe.
Yes. There we go.
Be active in the comment sections, both on the live videos and on the videos that we post, the clips. And stay up to date with us because we're going to be going live a lot more, especially with free agency coming up. We got a lot of clips coming out. Let us know what you guys would like to see from this channel, how we can better it, what you guys enjoy, what you don't. And you know, we love talking to you guys. So we just keep encouraging guys to come back. And we'll be here. We don't plan on going anywhere. We're going to be here, Patriots coverage for next couple of years, and hopefully after that. And we're working on some cool projects, especially with the draft and going into next year. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this channel continues to go, but it wouldn't be anywhere without you guys supporting. So we really appreciate that. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like Light Shadow says here. Thank you guys, all of you guys who stayed till the end. Brian, I saw you were here for quite some time. Seemed like the whole time. So thank you guys again for all the recent support. It means a ton to us. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to get further and further up as we get closer and closer to the draft, and we want to have a fun draft show with you guys. So yeah, comment on all the videos, all that stuff. Engage. We love engaging with you guys. We try to get back to comments as quickly as we can, and we got some exciting stuff coming up. Hopefully, that will hopefully announce in the next month or so. And so we'll until then we'll have a video coming out Thursday and then probably Sunday. But until then, we will see you guys next time.